I'm sure it doesn't
So I
say
got
that.
that one in there.
Pretty sure.
Okay, just for those of those people online that just joined us in this recording, we had a little technical difficulty getting started, but we did start with the why, and then President Bradbury just read the why of our IBD team, and now we're gonna go to, who would like to read the ground rules?
I got you.
Thank you.
Ground rules: to exhibit honesty, integrity, realism, trust, accuracy, respect, and humor. Provide open communication in an effort to work toward a common understanding. Enter the process with a clean slate and fresh start. Show commitment to the process and to the team. Listen to one person at a time, no speaking out of turn. Do not take things personally. When a decision is made, support the decision. Give a thumbs up or down if you want to discuss further before a final decision is made. Begin and end the meeting on time. Stay on topic and monitor your talk time so all voices are able to be heard.
So I'm a very experienced Zoom teacher. Like, it's very clear and like
Rhythm.
process time,
Has to be a
rhythm,
little
Something,
good
there is kind of a
fluency.
delay.
Enunciation.
Good prosody.
Yes.
Okay, so on our agenda, we got a new, this is like having a little bit of a delay, so like it wasn't quite, it's brand new, so probably just can't. So the first thing, on our agenda is Brian's gonna show insurance benefits. So let me see, I think Brooke, did you just email me that, right?
Yes, I emailed you the document.
Did you link it into the agenda?
No, I just
Okay.
emailed it to you.
Can you email it to Rebecca so she can link it into the
Yeah.
agenda?
I know, because I also dumped it, like, half of it on myself today. So I'm not drinking it as well. I could go.
This is super slow.
It's the weather.
That's one, that's a good one.
It's also real wet.
Okay, so, Brian, can I just keep this and you talk?
Sure. So, the increase to the plan overall is about 9.8%. So we met with the Murray Group, and they, sort of gave us what our new rates would be, and then we also told them that as part of the legislation, of course, they're aware of this, that more of the discretionary money was given for the medical side of our cost to help cover that. And that, we asked them, what would it be to like do the state plan? And as we started looking at it, our buyout plan is actually better than the state plan. So we said, why would we why would we try to go to the state plan when we already have an option that is better, in a sense?
And less expensive.
Pardon?
And less expensive. Is it not?
For the district?
For the district, then for us to go to the state plan, yes, but that's because of some of the rules of the state plan. They don't handle partial FTE as well with, most people in the state plan, they're 40-hour employees. They don't have, admin assistants who only work 10 months out of the year, even though they're 8, or someone working 7 hours who's
9 months a year.
9 months a year, right? So the costs do go up in the state plan because of that sort of factor. So a lot of times you're not comparing apples and apples when you really dive into it. So, but even just from like our plans with, the little deductibles and stuff like that, with the buyout plan, and, it's, if you can afford it, it's a pretty good deal. So, they we asked them then, I said, well, could you just run us some scenarios of, okay, what's it gonna look like for someone who, and I only have 4, we could have done, a million of them. One way that some districts are doing it, because we asked them, well, if we cover the buyout plan, but let's say somebody wants to not do the buyout plan because they have a family and they want to cover more people and they could, with the driver plan. And I said, well, because right now we just sort of say, we do have an allocation, we do the driver plan, effectively, that's our allocation. And then traditionally, if it costs have gone up on that, we've covered that cost increase. So they said that some districts, they sort of do the same thing, they call it an allocation model, where they say, okay, we'll cover, in this case, it's $825 when we get into it, because that looked to be a number that we could do. And the employee gets to choose out of that $825 how they want to allocate it. Maybe they don't want vision, maybe they want dental, maybe they want, whatever, they get to choose. And I would say it is a use or lose it. It's like you have $825 to use. If you only choose to use $700 of it, well, then that's what you chose. Or if that was your situation. So let me just go through this and then you can ask questions. So here, or did we have? Nope, okay.
Can I clear something up
Sure.
real quick? So the defined contribution is only for like medical, dental, and vision. It isn't for any other supplemental insurances.
Right, there's only, but it's not gonna be for like the disability insurance and.
Because we can buy that stuff. You already buy us a little life insurance, we can add our spouse a little bit.
Right.
We can't spend this on that.
Correct.
Right, it's just these.
It's just the medical, right. So for example, the blue is this year, the green would be next year in the scenario. So right now, if you look at, there's an employee that's just covering themselves with medical, dental, and vision. So you can see right now, it costs the district almost $600 a month, $599.89. The premiums there. The district monthly contribution is those 2. And then the employee cost is the variance there between, they chose the Delta Dental blue, or, I'm sorry, I did this fast. We just got this like at noon today. That's like the Willamette Dental, that's the higher dental, is what I put on there, $47.83. But let's say that's an employee's choice. So the district contribution, the district only go up to $34.85 on dental, so the employee's paying $20 out of pocket a month. And if this is just an example. Does that make sense?
So this is based on this year's driver.
Correct.
Not the district changing to the buyout models for everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just because we're not proposing to get rid of the driver plan.
Right.
It will still be an option. So in this case, you can see that the premiums went up $60.90, mostly because of medical, which is about the 10%. Okay, from $545 went up to $618.25. The dental, yeah, see that $47.83. Sorry guys, I got too much stuff going on. Anyway, and the bottom line is, if they had $20 out of pocket because they're only using $660 worth of options, they had no out of pocket. So it's really not given a big deal for this person. In other words, if someone's on the driver plan and they don't have much out of pocket, and they decide to go on the driver plan next year, they're not gonna have any out of pocket.
They're gonna save up.
But they're gonna leave money on the table too, right?
Well,
Yeah,
they
$20.04.
Well, they could go up, let's go to the next page, it'll make sense. Just-
This is, gonna leave $160 on the
Okay.
table.
Okay, now, here, this might be this is better. So, here is somebody, an employee who is doing the buyout plan just for themselves right now, okay? So I chose the buyout medical, the Willamette dental, that's the $47.83, and vision, okay? So currently, this employee this year total premiums are $685, the district kicks in $579.85. So that employs $105.89 out of pocket this year for the buyout plan and Willamette Dental. Okay, that's what they're paying. Next year, if we went with this allocation model of 825 total, you can see the premiums are going up to 746. The district would contribute all of it. So they would have no out of pocket. So it's $105 to the good a month for them, plus the district's kicking another 61, so the district is actually putting in just per month $167 more than last year for that one individual. Okay? So, but if we're just looking at employees, they're saving $1,200 a year.
Can I just ask so that I understand, but if that's based on a defined contribution of 825, that person is, in an essence, leaving 105 on the table, is that what the negative
Correct.
105 is?
Because,
So, and that's use it or lose it, like,
Correct.
kind of thing.
The 105 is what they are saving from this year.
This year.
From this
Yes.
year, but out of the 825, that's
They're
still
only
leaving.
$80.
right, this is
Okay,
not,
they're
right.
leaving that 80.
Because
They
these
see the
dollars are
746.
supposed to go to medical benefits, not as income.
Right.
But this is helping your income.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so let's go to the next scenario, because that was just, so here's somebody who's on the buyout plan with one kid. So this year, same thing, there's their premiums $1,000, the district's just kicking in the same amount, $545. And the employees currently this year, out of pocket, is $467. In the green, if we went down this way, you can now see that costs are going up almost $100 a month for that one employee. Just, it's costing us, $1,200 just to cover the increase of the 9.8%, or at least in the premium. But district's going up to 825, so I could have put that anywhere. And then you can see in the very last column that so the employee is actually paying almost $150 less a month out of pocket, and having their increase covered. Last scenario is fairly similar. I said, okay, now we have an employee who chose a driver plan because they have their spouse, and the spouse, family's the most expensive, but driver spouse is the next level. And so this year they'd be paying almost $700 out of pocket, is sort of what that is if you did employee spouse just on the driver plan. Next year, that cost would go down $126. And again, you can see the variance of that $246.29. That's about as much because they're taking every benefit that's there. And of course, you could run scenarios there. But effectively, if somebody is only covering themselves, that means they can now be covered with the buyout plan at no cost. If you had dependents and you wanted to cover them and you wanted to not have it quite hit as hard, we asked the Murray Group, would you drop it since most of our employees could just afford the buyout plan by themselves? Wouldn't we just give them the good plan? And they said, no, you should have this as an option if somebody wanted a lesser cost option than cover more people. So I guess that's the only information I have, and we could run it. Depending on what people have chosen in the past, sort of depend, and what they chose next year, you could run the scenarios all day, right? But I asked them if other districts do this. I think they said Lewiston does it this way, and others have paid a certain percentage of family, like at 60% and 30%. They go, sometimes that gets with their employee navigator and sign up can get a little complex and confusing for people, and then this is usually a more streamlined where people understand it a little bit better.
You guys would need to go back in, everybody would, it wouldn't automatically roll this year. Everybody would have to go in and re-enroll in their stuff because it is a defined contribution. In my previous employment, we had defined contributions, And it made like negotiating in the future a lot easier because we were just focusing a little bit more on that defined contribution number.
And then everybody goes in with the money from dad and goes down the buffet and gets whatever they want to eat until the dad's money's out. And then you can pull out your own wallet.
This is a win-win in the fact that we're seeing this 9.8% increase, which is pretty significant. But then now we have money to put towards our dependents and our families. And it gives you guys more flexibility on how to use that money.
So with the 825, so we're going from a 545 to an 825 contribution, that, what is that, $280, somewhere around there? $280 increase or so per employee is what you're saying could be funded out of that excess insurance dollars right now. We could look at that and say, I like the model, but we could say, let's go to a $750 defined district monthly contribution. Or is this is putting all of that insurance funds from last week, we're looking at that state allocation that they put into discretionary, but it does have that flexibility. That's where we could change that district monthly contribution to not go all the way up to 825.
Yeah, nothing's set in stone. This is, I think, that's I think that's a position, not an interest. I think if our interest is to follow the intent of our revenues, then this follows that interest.
Do we have what the final, how much will that cost us with employees to go up that 280? How many employees do we?
This is, by doing about the 825, that's about the $1.2 million.
That uses it all. It's allocated all that medical money.
Assuming we have about the same amount of employees, and as a general rule, they, fill up or get close to that number or so. I mean, it's always all of it's an estimate.
We do have about approximately 585 people who are currently enrolled.
And the bottom line for this is that it looks like everybody sees some savings, which comes back as income that you're not spending on insurance because the district is increasing the amount that we're putting toward insurance. And depending on your family situation, that just looks different, and which option you buy.
And
So can it,
I'm sorry, usually when you see that big increase of like 9.8%, and then we have a COLA over here, in that scenario, we're still making less money sometimes, because when we have that. In this, again, there's more money in your pocket, and, I just, it's better benefit that way.
In the up to 825, and I'm just trying to think through, somebody that is just on the driver plan and they up to they now have the option, they can up to the buy-up, but they are costing the district less in benefits by doing that. They're not utilizing the full 825 contribution. Does that one look like? And and the only reason I'm processing through that is that I think back to other teams and groups of people too that have always fought the little bit of, so somebody who, because they have a family, is now bringing in more funds. Because we're covering more, it's a use it or lose it scenario. So when we get up to that 825, I'm always willing to throw myself under the bus just processing through, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with anything. I'm already covered under my husband's, and my kids are covered under them, so I'm dual covered. There's no reason for me to have the buy-up. There's no reason for me to have any of that. I'm not gonna have that 825 district monthly contribution. That really, it's not income, but it is part of a benefits package. My benefits package is gonna be less than somebody who does have a family, right?
Even if you did the buyout plan, it would be less.
It would still be less. I'm just making sure that I understand that, because I know we've had people in the past that come in and say with coverage things, they get iffy about that. I'm good with I like covering things, but I'm just making sure that.
Just that scenario is very typical amongst every large organization.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
So the one step further question then would become, what would happen with those dollars? So, say half your staff fit that scenario. So there's still, whatever the difference is, you say there's $80-some, whatever that's left on the table, where do those dollars go? They just get absorbed back into the
Yeah,
It's
it's part of
absorbed into
the
the
fund.
people that's using it. I mean,
Right, I mean, it's,
It's-
eventually, I mean, when I looked at what our 9.8% increase was gonna be, I didn't try to go look at what everybody's choices were and what they do. I looked at our, at the check that we're writing to Blue Cross every month, and I times it by 10%. So ultimately, eventually, that if we have a group that only half the people are taking advantage of medical benefits, I don't think that's the case, but if that was the case, then certainly we would know our cost increases for next year would be less. Just like, I mean, as I calculated when I showed you that first part, on the increases on that, just the left column of the.
Do you want me to go up to scenario one?
Yeah,
And-
well, I'm just saying that the, part of it, when I said we had the 9.8% increase, and if we covered that, and it was, I can't remember, $300,000 or something, whatever it was, that was just doing exactly what we're doing and just covering the new increase per person, whatever their choices happen to be.
Do we
So
still-
taking our district contribution of 580, and now our district contribution is gonna be, another 10% above that. So it's gonna be 630 for the district, or 620, if that makes sense, right?
Brian, do we still have an HSA?
Yeah.
It's an option.
Cause that, to Laura's point, if you have a person in her situation, she can put the amount up to as much as everyone else into an HSA.
If
If she picks the lower plan.
she has to pick.
But then she's getting to her point, she
Well-
does get to keep the
No,
money
yeah.
in a,
Well, we would,
towards medical.
right, well, first they have to pick the high deductible plan.
Mhm.
You have to, because that's the law.
Right.
And then we talked to our group, and we would thought that for the maximum district contribution would be the variance between,
Yep.
well, not the whole 825,
Wow.
because we have some that's medical. It'd be the variance between the, was it the driver and the HSA? It ended up being about $130 a month.
Hmm.
So right now, we're contributing 70. 78, so it went up to about 130 when we used the same way that we determined that 78 would go up to 130.
So that is a way to address, the people can address that.
That's only for
There's
people
about
who use the
32
driver
people.
plan, so if you do the buyout plan, you can't legally have an HSA.
You can
Because
only do the
there's
HSA
no
if you have the
deductible.
high deductible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
not
it's
even
just
driver
high
plan.
deductible, but you
Oh,
can
I
save up that
see.
money to use out to your deductible.
Right.
So you still could, in her case, she could do that because she has another insurance. I'm just using her scenario, not her in particular.
Right.
But then you still
I'm
get to
not-
keep the
I'm not
medical
listening.
money towards you because, and the district's still giving that much, meeting the intent of the law. Or as Georgiana would say, the spirit of the law. So there is a way for that to happen.
But that money has to be used on
Medical.
new medical, so it's not like,
But that's,
it's not like people are just gonna pocket that.
no, it has to be, and that was the
But they
intent.
could use it for other
Yeah,
deductibles.
that was the intent of the
other
law, yeah.
other medical.
Yeah.
Right, but the other benefit to the HSA is that you can continue, you can put money into that account, and then when you retire, you can use that money to pay for your medical
You own it.
insurance.
Yeah.
You own the account.
Until you get to
You own it.
Medicare.
Like
So
I
that
took it
money
from my
doesn't-
last district,
you
I
don't
brought mine
lose that
down here.
money?
Yeah.
It's a health savings account, so you can use it for your insurance.
Follows you even if you change.
Premium.
When I came from another district, I brought it with me, and I brought it with me. Yeah.
So there is some benefit,
It can actually be a really good option for
a healthy person.
a young employee.
Hey.
If they can,
Depend, ages of perception,
You gotta-
it doesn't have to be young.
She
it
was
can
calling,
just
she
be-
was
Yeah, I
calling
just-
you young.
you gotta build up,
Healthy.
build up your
That's right.
HSA, so
Healthy.
to be able to cover that big deductible if anything happened, and once you have that built up,
That's
it's.
all you do, you build that up.
If you run out of
So
donuts,
as long as
you could
you're-
use it.
Right.
Healthy, emphasis on health, yeah.
Said we have 585 people.
That's including dependents.
Okay, any more questions about this before we go to the other?
You know, and that is a rough number, I'd have to go back with, I know it's close to 600.
Can I see one number again? I'm sorry. You wanna go?
Number?
I was just kinda curious how many people are in, not to use Laura's, but that scenario, or, I mean, my scenario is I insure only myself.
Yeah.
When we
You know,
sent-
how many people are
when we
in
sent
that
out, you know,
boat?
we sent out the survey and there were a few people that responded to that very scenario in that survey, but that's only a few, so, I don't know.
I understand this, I don't have questions on this, I
Yeah.
think that'll come down to a brainstorm in the end with, I disagree with the full intent of the understanding of the law, but that'll come down to brainstorming and looking at all of that. I still think that there was flexibility, and that's why they put it into discretionary, was that if districts have solid insurance plans like we do, to say, utilize those funds as you see appropriate, so I think,
That
I
actual,
think it can get
just so
there.
you know, on the background of that, that language of flexibility was not originally in the legislation.
Right.
It took, I actually, since I'm the IASCO president right now, we had every business manager call the state board. We had the
So did the
superintendents.
superintendent.
And the
And they
IAO
actually,
people were wanting it.
JFAC already passed it. We got them to actually reconvene the committee after they'd already passed the budget to go back to change that language. So that language of losing our flexibility was actually in there. And it took like some very last minute,
So that we got. the
all hands it up. Well,
Yeah, but you're not-
it almost was taken away, and if this is my opinion, if the districts across the state were given an additional $6,936 discretionary, and it said that it is on the medical line of discretionary, but if you don't use it, you can go that, if all of them, sort of gave the finger at that legislation, I do not think
Guess what?
it is gonna be, I mean, we as a group can do whatever, but I'm telling you, on
And
the
I
political
would not be in
landscape, that's
support
how
of
it
that
goes.
at all, like, I would definitely be thumbs down until we got to the place where it was used for this, because we were told with no uncertain terms that there is going to be a report back to the legislature on this, and it's gonna be super important that we're using this for medical, like, there's no way we can use this for other compensation besides medical, in my opinion. There's no way. This was a really big deal with the superintendent's group and IASPA.
We're just, I agree with you, Laura, that the contradiction of discretionary
Yeah.
and becoming less discretionary, is, I don't agree with the legislature on that, but they didn't really ask me my opinion.
That's weird. Yeah, I think we should,
You know, I
I think-
agree, I wish it truly was discretionary, but that's not their ideas right now.
And the bottom line, I guess, is we still have people who are paying out of pocket above and beyond what is being paid on their behalf to cover families, so we can bring the costs down. You're still putting money back in their pockets, and we're
So-
doing what the legislature intended for us to do.
at this point, do people wanna do our common interest and do some brainstorming right now, or go to the bigger package first and then talk about it? The reason I ask is because if we really think about the interests, maybe our interests aren't aligning, cause my interest that I would like to put up there from the district viewpoint, again, with everyone else's input, is I would like my number one interest at this point would be that our insurance package is more competitive with the two surrounding districts, because I keep hearing over and over again, well, Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls have better insurance than we do. So that to me is a major driver, no pun intended, on this piece of it.
That falls under the umbrella.
So do we have those numbers?
I don't know where they're at now with all this new stuff, though, I have no idea.
Didn't, we asked, what did Nellie say, would she compare to Coeur d'Alene?
Yeah, one of them, she compared Coeur d'Alene and said that actually we had a better plan.
Our buyout plan, not our driver.
But Coeur d'Alene still pays money towards
Family.
family insurance and we do not.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's more out-of-pocket expenses as far as deductibles and co-insurance and things like that.
So,
Nobody ever sees that though, they just see that first number and think that's the better deal.
Until they get their
Unfortunately.
medical bill.
Right, yeah. So there's the other thing for me is an equity thing, so when I'm talking, I've talked to at least one member who talked about, they didn't wanna see a lack of equity, and so I'm paraphrasing what I thought I heard earlier, so, which is if anybody wants, it's $825 is what we said the number would be, is that true, $825?
The defined.
If somebody wants the $825, they could buy, for example, a single person could buy the driver plan along with vision and dental. They now have a high deductible and they can have all the difference dropped into their
No.
No.
HSA.
No.
They can't get the driver.
The only way you can get a high, the medical savings account is you have to have a high deductible plan. That's not, I didn't put that up there. That's even a different plan with different costs.
It's
Gotcha.
a 3,000, 6,000 deductible.
It's, yeah. it's-
That one's not even up there. That's not our driver plan. That's one below our.
That's one below the driver
Okay,
plan.
gotcha.
Right,
Thank you.
Correct. But, yeah, so if someone who's currently, let's say I'm a new teacher and I just took the driver plan because it was more economical, right?
Right.
And I didn't want to have any out of pocket. They pretty much were there, except for the vision if they needed glasses. So now they could actually do the same thing, but do the buy-it plan, get a better insurance plan.
And still no.
And
out of
still
pocket.
no out of pocket,
For
but
everything.
they would not reach the 825.
They would not reach $825. So what that difference, what did we say that difference was? Was it?
It's like $80 for the buy-up, I think it was. Like
Well, the difference between, if they buy everything up and they're single, or they're only buying for themselves because kids and spouse are covered under spouse's plan, they're undershooting $825 a month by about $80.
$80.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just want some sense of how far off that is.
Right.
Because the less distance that's off, the less you could argue equity, but it's not that big of a deal. Because I'll have that question.
And
so.
this time of year, the difference would be about $100 on that buy-it plan between, not the 80-some, but near 100, so.
Right, they'd be paying out of pocket. Now they're paying nothing out of pocket and getting it. Okay.
Is the driver plan, does it have the same deductible level that we have had in the past?
So we've had some discussion about that, there's some other,
We wanted to take the buy-up plan to it has a 30/60 right now for the office copay. We wanted that to go down to 20/40. We wanted both to be 20/40. I think the other one is something 50.
yeah, they'd both be 20/40, and then the deductible on the driver would go down to 500.
And they
So
agreed
that's
to that?
even more, that's even more money.
What, the Murray
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, they price it for us, they don't agree.
Mhm.
They, sure, you can do whatever, it's just how much it costs. So we could do that as part of the,
Your green lines, do those?
well, it's part of
represent
the,
those?
effectively, the 9.8% increase might end up being a 10.1% increase.
I see.
Because, because the plan's a little more expensive, but the numbers they are giving us, or I used, were sort of assuming we were gonna do those things to try to enhance the package a little bit, but it wasn't tweaking the packages greatly,
It's still
but a little bit.
more money in people's pockets.
Yeah.
Less
Yeah,
out
for
of
sure.
pocket.
Less out, whichever.
There's a
you
lot,
say.
the office pay seemed to be a big one, and then the deductible on the driver plan going down would be a positive.
And is that a decrease of 500? Was it 1,000 before?
Yeah, it
that?
was 1,000 before.
okay, I pasted this in,
I think it was in there. Oh, you're
I
right,
just
yeah.
did, put that in there in case anyone wants to look at it again. I just pasted it into the agenda right here, under resources. So that way it's less things for you to do later, Brooke.
Thank you,
She was mad at me today, so I was just getting some brownie points. Just kidding. Okay, so do people wanna go to talking about, money in the big picture and talk more about what we started last time? Or, do people wanna specifically, do discussion about the, insurance? What's your flavor?
Put it all together, it's all together.
What do you think, Bob? Put it all together. You okay with that?
Yeah, we haven't talked about leadership dollars or.
Yeah, one
anything
thing
as well.
Jason brought up, was leadership dollars, so I don't know if people wanna talk about that on top of everything else, but it kinda feels like it'll fit in, it's gotta fit in with the big picture too, or do you wanna talk about that first?
No, I think it's a big picture item, actually.
I have one little language thing.
Where is it in this
that we
agenda?
work on with columns. The message I sent to you, they can only move 2 columns.
Oh, yeah.
Is it in, did you put it in the agenda?
That was in district communication, wasn't it?
No,
I thought that didn't.
no, I put that in, I had wanted to get it onto the agenda, I was looking for, I got these as input,
I read that.
but maybe not.
Okay, well, we're already at 40 minutes in, so we need to make a decision and move forward, or we're gonna be here till midnight, so. What do people wanna do?
So what are you talking
I'm like, quick, sum it up.
So,
Well,
we.
let's just wait, why don't you put it in the agenda instead of verbally just saying it, things should be on the agenda. The norms are like, things go on the agenda and then we bring them up, so can you just copy and paste it onto the agenda then if you want to talk about it?
I have a picture of what was on the board last week with our we did our recruit and retain interest, and we started putting up ideas.
Yeah,
as we
Rebecca
paused.
has it,
It's in the minutes.
are the minutes linked into here? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Lisa, do you wanna use your beautiful handwriting again?
You want me to pick it back up?
Well, we're gonna have, I mean, this is gonna be the rest of our dying days, so we need to, this has to be,
Don't use green for money.
okay, so here's the,
Irish.
Is John's scenario that's in there, is that that's a proposal?
I have no idea what we're talking about now. What are we talking
It's just-
Well, this is John's scenario.
I made a proposal, so we talked to me.
That's what we talked about last week, and that's what I think that's our brainstorm.
John just called it John's scenario, so that's.
Perfect.
Insightful that way.
What happened to my picture?
She's gonna play with the mousy thing over here.
there we go. I was just trying to make it big, so she could see it. Okay, so let's recruit and retain staff. Number 2, competitive with neighboring districts. Number 3 is honoring discussions from the previous year. Number 4, honor the work of teachers, like if they're distinguished. Honor the work of teachers equals distinguished is what you wrote. Honor work of teachers equals distinguished. Sustainable is the next one. The next one after that is equitable. The next one is value all staff.
Additional interest?
Yep, and the next one, the last one is livable wage.
Can we just draw pigs flying across the board for that one? Like, we know that.
Our brainstorms are scenario 3. The next brainstorm, number 2, is scenario 3 plus, in parentheses. 50% of 1.2 million I don't know what that says, you guys, I can't see it.
Enhanced medical benefits to the
Oh.
salary schedule.
We're being flexible with the discretion.
Yeah.
Oh, to salaries get, I don't know what that is.
50% of 1.2 million,
Enhanced medical to salary schedule.
So you take 600 to salaries and 600 to medical, because I think was what that's saying.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, and all groups equals, it's kinda hard to tell you that
All
one.
groups, 5% increase, that covers the 60%.
And Brian Wallace's 60% threshold covers Brian Wallace's 60%.
all
60%
groups
of the-
increase.
And then MOU for using the fund balance for having an increase in,
Okay.
like we did before, equals drop days, that was mine.
Yeah, they should roll that.
How we did that last, when we had like the one-time money and we had an MOU for if the fund balance was over a certain amount, then we do drop days in November. That was mine. But I thought that worked out pretty well. People were happy, but anyway, it's just a
We're
brainstorm.
definitely happy at Christmas.
November.
Mhm.
They were.
Okay, and then I need to find Brian's, do you want me to bring up Brian's scenarios, people?
I think that's what we got down to, is the scenarios, which really.
Um,
Or-
Brian's scenarios. I don't know, why do I call
They're
things
not.
dumb things like, that was very,
Oh, yeah, that was
It's
a
in there.
slideshow.
Yeah.
is this it?
Yes.
Yeah, this is what people wanna see, right?
Yes.
So where's scenario 3? That was the first brainstorm.
Keep
You guys help me, there we go, thank you. We missed a week and my brain forgot, so there we go. Thank you, smart people that are younger than me, obviously. Brian, your point.
I think
I'm older than you. Oh, no,
I
you're
don't
not.
think so.
So scenario 3, this is, that was the first brainstorm, so let's refresh our brains. Does anyone want Brian to, talk that through?
Can I ask a question, Brian? Just in processing the meeting last time and conversation, that state revenue increase is really the difference between ADA and enrollment funding, right? For the most part? The 2.3 million?
Correct, if you go back to the very first page. Go, I gotta think how I went through this, so, okay, go next one. So, here is our revenue, 22, 23, 21, 22, and, okay, that's two different, okay, so that, now if we go to the next one. Oh, that's AP, the one more, I can't remember where I had it. Anyway, I had a variance somewhere, oh, that 2.3 comes from, yeah, really from enrollment. If we were only at, I thought I had it on one of these pages, estimated SBA increase from 21, 22, and
So is the 2.3 a combination of enrollment over ADA, looks like maybe is $795,000 more, and then
We
the
would've-
increase in the medical 1.5, does
If-
that equal the 22.3?
No, we would have, if we had ADA this year, we would have been in a $700,000 hole for fund balance, or at least for revenues. With enrollment, we're like 2.3 million to the good, so it's almost a $3 million difference. So it's, part of that is, if you wanna think right now, we would've had 212 units, we had 239, and it's $110,000 a unit. I mean, so if we only earned 215 units, or let's say 219, 20 times 110,000, that's the revenue impact if we went back to 88.
Okay, so the only reason that I'm asking is there's no guarantee moving forward that we're gonna continue to get funded at this level. So what does that do for us if we put this money into the salary schedule, which becomes ongoing costs?
Well, we're rolling the dice a little bit. I can't see this, and maybe the state does it, I don't know. Who knows what they do, but I mean, the state, we now will be on our 3rd year of enrollment.
Yeah.
If they went back to ADA, every district would be in protection.
Yeah.
Every district in the state. Not only are we gonna take a 20-unit hit, but I'm gonna pay another 5 or 6 units, so helping West eat out, honestly. So I can't see them completely going back to ADA, or if they do, somehow they'll adjust the formula with dollars to make up the gap.
Yeah.
I don't know how that'll happen. That's my guess, but all I'm saying is that there is no guarantee. It's a state board emergency rule. It's not in law right now. It's a state board emergency rule that they just passed in April, right? And the governor said they'd look at it again. So
We cannot.
if we wanted to be really super conservative, I could have come to this group and said, we're gonna budget on 88. And, you know, that probably wouldn't have gone over very well. Because next year, we're not gonna budget on 88, we're gonna budget enrollment, because we're gonna get, those revenues are gonna be there. Assuming our kids show up. Which I think they will.
They are, and then
So,
some.
You know, so, we know, but, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. So, you know,
I
this
just
is
think it's
just my
important
opinion,
for
right?
the group to recognize that we could potentially, and it sounds like you're not feeling that way, but we could potentially be talking about one-time money. And a lot
Possibly.
of it that we're wanting to put in the salary schedule.
Yeah, no, right, and, yeah, I mean, and I think, I don't know, I imagine some districts are looking at it that way, maybe not, I don't know.
No, there are districts that are looking at it that way because the State Board of Education President, Kurt Liebeck, said, we are going to work on something. The state superintendent group that I'm the president for Region 1, we've started working on. We have a whole thing ready to go that we're starting to work on to present and meet with key legislators, but it's not a done deal for sure. And I would hate to budget and put it into the salary schedule and then the money is not there. Because then the other thing after that is riffing if they go back to ADA.
We just need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, I mean, there is some uncertainty out there, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, in essence of adding to brainstorms, I'll add on there, continuing the leadership stipends for 1 year with a committee created to review and assess those going forward. Because I think there has to be judgments on brainstorms yet.
Okay, so continue. I'm gonna add. For 1 year, you said?
Yeah, with a review committee.
Yes, are you searching for leadership? I was just looking at what leadership thought it cost us.
It did.
in a year.
It was
280.
280.
280.
So 280, this is how much is 1%? So it's like 1%.
Right,
Can you put that kind of in parentheses? That's about
Equals
1.
1%.
Yeah, equals 1%.
of salary schedule.
Yeah. Because I assume, I mean, it would have to be a different brainstorm, if this wasn't part of her brainstorm. My brainstorm would be if you continue leadership money for 1 year with the review committee, that the total percent, that's one-time money, so the overall going to the salary schedule is 1% less because it's going to
Would
that.
you go to the number 3? That would be one brainstorm, is taking it down. My brainstorm would be using the unknown and other needs funds from the increase, that $2 million excess from the 861.
Okay, so that's basically from that brainstorm, there's 2 sub-bullets. One is that the overall percentage is 1% less, and another brainstorm is using enrollment revenues for the unknown and or other needs, that's 37%.
That hold back.
Yeah, the hold back, yeah. Which we, I don't,
I'd like, I would rather
yeah.
hold it back.
And having a 1 year, I actually am comfortable, I would be comfortable with that for 1 year.
I like the 1 year idea, I
Yeah.
think it gives people enough time to let them know if Lisa's on the table, and then you.
And I think with the committee, there's still so many questions from teachers, there's still equity questions, there's still
Yeah.
stuff. It gives us that, hey guys, this is a hard fast, we have to do
Plus,
it
if
this
the
year.
enrollment is for 1 year, then you have the 1 year before you go to ADA that you do have it covered. I like that.
And those funds are there from that
Yeah.
excess, that 60-30, I was like, that to me makes
Yeah,
sense.
so I'll
It's
take
one-time
I take my brainstorming off about the percentage overall.
She's knocking hers out.
I think that's a good win-win in my opinion. But somebody else can put something else up, I just think that's a really good idea for that.
Well, I sort of agree. Were we losing go back? Yeah, I think
Okay,
if
so
it's
put
a-
it back up. I thought somebody would.
There's a 1%. I mean, we are losing those leadership dollars.
Yeah.
So I wasn't accounting on any expenses, so if we're gonna do that, I think we choose to do that, and we have an opportunity to cost somewhere.
Yeah.
And all of those leadership dollars are funding the advanced professional money, which flows directly back to our teachers. So I think there has to be a conversation about, we can't do everything, so.
Like this one you're talking about, scenario 4, where it's 70% AP passes.
Mhm.
I will tell you, and I'm like not to, like I said, not to go to the issues and rank them at all. We surveyed our membership over the last 2 weeks just to make sure that we were aligning with like what their interests are. Dropping the AP, it's not ratifiable, like it will not be, so in my mind, like I don't want to spend an hour discussing an option, but that's just me, in my opinion, looking
But wait,
at that stuff.
can you guys give us some data? So how many people responded to the survey? Like, this would be good to start with this information, because that would kind of help us understand.
It was a ranking, I'm like, I don't think that it's a hard, fast data, but we had like 110 that responded to the survey, and I will say.
Well, that's more than half the certified, that's about half.
It was 60-some%.
Yeah, 60% of our membership, and the number 1 top interest was continuing AP funds, number 2 is to the salary base. And then we really were looking at the difference in jumping up to the driver plan, like doing the buyout plan or doing the leadership stipends in this revenue. People were kind of mixed hat on that. It was pretty split even, so we felt like it was probably more comfortable to go with that model.
But as far as the survey for the AP money,
The amount of comments that we got that said,
what
and
ranks that highest?
ranked that highest, and that stated, which is true, that in the language, we said we would come back to discuss the 5th year, that it has been negotiated to go through. They were like, we feel like we negotiated with the intent and put the rules in, so
And
we
just-
just wanted to make sure we were on.
Just
pace
from
with
a,
where
just
we're at.
a looking out, the way that the state salary schedule goes out with the AP,
Mhm.
in a couple years, there will be no money left except to pass through AP. Because our steps and lanes are gonna cost more than what the other rungs give us. You can see the legislation out there, you can see that, P5 only goes up 1% each year now. P4 only goes up 1%, the big jumps are on the AP on that rung for the revenues. So if all that's a pass-through to those people, there's nothing left for steps and lanes. Eventually, we're gonna be in a problem, guys, it's not gonna be sustainable, just so you know.
For the next, and I actually am more on board with you than what I probably sound like. But that's for the next 2 years with that rollout, or are you saying that there's further rollout than when they finish out the AP?
I'm saying that if you just,
The AP's full.
you can look
Just for
at,
the next, yeah.
you
the
can
next
look
2.
at, as we get more people on AP, and that's all the big increases on salary-based apportionment right now are doing the AP and those increases. Right now, you can look at it, a P1 was funded at, let's say, 45,000, and it was 45,001% this year. That's all the increase on that was. The big was all there at the bottom. And so, since we're passing that through, the math doesn't work to give a 5% raise across the board when all the money you have for your increases is going directly to people anyway. At some point, it's not gonna work. Just so you know, I mean, and when we had those discussions last year, that was talked about, is that effectively, districts who are keeping the AP in the whole pot and spreading across the board are gonna have bigger increases. We're gonna have, those people who have got that AP are gonna get a bigger increase. But if you're a 6-year teacher, at some, and then but it's gonna eventually impact us being able to afford steps and lanes. Because step and lane isn't funded by the state, since we're not following the salary schedule. So we're getting in where I think it's gonna muddle, not for, I guess, this year, but you look down the road, that it will be something that we have to,
Reconcile.
Well, and I wanted to bring up too, so how does it work? Because last year we negotiated that it would be, so if you look at the language in the negotiated agreement, it's to pass through 4 years. So we agreed that we would do the 8 for 4 years, and then we would have additional discussions at year 5. So that's why I wanted to bring it up and just kind of talk about, the language and what was already
Do you remember what page
negotiated.
it's on?
I think we said going
Under
through year
salary
5, it would be that how do you continue to earn it after year 5, so that somebody
Right.
couldn't then float once they've gotten it at year 13, technically, if they vested their vest and then float.
Yeah.
And here's the thing you wanted to talk about, Brooke.
Yeah. Now it's been moved down, keep going.
No,
Here's the-
so go
yeah.
in that paragraph. So it's stipend schedule is below,
Criteria for maintaining AP 5 will be an ongoing discussion. That's the ongoing discussion.
Yeah, it's not about whether we're funding it, it's about, are we
How do
going
you-
to expect that you're still meeting all those criteria that the state established to get there, to be able to continue to give the money.
Because right now, once you've earned a spot, you stay at that spot.
Right.
Except for on year 5, that hasn't been fully actualized yet. I agree with what you're saying in the future of this, and I think that, we're in a hard spot right now because we literally have a very veteran staff. And that's where it comes through. And then and the hard thing is your new staff, this is within a 10-year, this was a 10-year picture. 5 years were focused on that base salary, bringing it up to 40,500. 5 years are now based on the veteran. We're in the tail end of that veteran staff and have hit the biggest cost of living increase we've seen ever in Rathdrum. But those people that are in their first 5 years weren't here during that 5-year increase. They don't see that. So we're in a very stuck spot.
And the people in the middle haven't seen really anything.
But if I look at
10
where,
years.
yeah, well,
I mean,
Yeah.
they're getting a little, but they didn't get the drastic increase on the front end, and they're not reaching the back end yet, so.
yeah, it's just, we're kinda in this middle gap spot. So I guess when I'm looking at it, I'm still having to look at where are we at financially right now? What can we do right now? How do we prioritize to our staff? That's where, and I'm like, but those are gonna have to be longer discussions and bigger things and bigger understanding for all of our teachers. I'm just saying that we're not gonna do it without the AP, like, it will be a hard, fast fail at this point in time. And we have, it
Because
just will be.
there is higher numbers on your survey for AP, so to ratify it. So that means that these scenario 4, 5, and 6 are out. So really only scenarios, according to that, scenario 1, 2, and 3 would be the only ones that would be ratifiable according to their survey.
So this is of your brainstorms.
Right, of Brian's brainstorm.
I'd like to speak to that just a little bit. That from the beginning, I have felt that the AP money creates an expectation going into the future that will be very hard to cope with, and you're now experiencing that, if I hear you correctly.
And I'm
And
like.
as you go forward, if you maintain all that, the expectation is just going to grow, and we'll eventually get to a cliff point. And that's what Brian is suggesting. At some point, it will not be sustainable. And the day of reckoning will come, and it will be very, very difficult to work through. So my suggestion is, and I don't know the answer, but my suggestion is find ways now to mitigate that expectation.
So that kind of brings me up to my thoughts, like on the leadership stipends. Because you guys have found that the 8 at this point in time is more important. And over the past few years, we focused, like I said, a couple of years ago, we got increases for people, our most senior people, on the bottom right of the matrix. We focused on that because we had the upper left that we're seeing increases from the state. Now we have these people in the middle, like Lisa had said, that really haven't been in this equation. You put those leadership stipends back in there, that was state funded, the state has taken them away, but now our staff has become dependent upon them. They're not funded anymore. So, the same kind of people that are getting these leadership stipends are actually the same people that are getting the ABE stipends, if you look at it. So I would much rather take what's ever in those leadership stipends across the board.
Was leadership stipends on your priority list of
It's
questions?
the number 2 priority, so we're basically tied, so this is our number 2 priority column.
Mhm.
So you can kind of look at all through here. So when we did the survey, the 8 funds came out number 1, but it was almost a tie with adding salary to the base. Okay, the number 2 overall priority is the leadership funds.
Do the teachers recognize that the 8 funds are actually being paid for?
Subsidized.
Subsidized
With the
by
old
the
leadership.
leadership dollars, like they're gone.
Yeah, I don't know, the thing that I would question on that is that the leadership stipends are all over the board though, so I don't know how.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would be equitable if you say one.
I'm just saying from the state,
Right.
that the governor said, we're gonna take the money we've been paying
Yeah.
the leadership, and we're gonna use that to fund the advanced professional rounds. So
Right.
I just wanna make sure that the teachers recognize
Yeah.
that's
they
how
probably don't.
that's how that's happening.
And I think what Brooke just said is the leadership, I mean, this is not necessarily true in elementary school, it is, I don't work in an elementary school, but at the high school, lots of the people receiving leadership dollars in my building have been teaching for 10 years. They're up in the APE list, they are,
Yeah.
in fact, up there, that's who our department chairs are, and et cetera, et cetera. And Brooke, is that your point? Yeah, that tends to be true, whether you can find someone who's only been teaching for 5 years and is the 3rd grade leader in an elementary school with 3 3rd grade classes, and there's a leadership dollars coming to one of those teachers, and they've only been doing it 5 years and don't get 8 money. I don't know, but my guess is that Brooke is probably right, the bulk of it are the people that qualify for $8.
And I do have younger staff, less veteran staff that say, I wanna be a part of these leadership dollars, how do I get them? It's always the same people, over and over again, how do I get them? And now we have the same people that have been getting them over and over again, are now dependent upon them, even though we've got the aid coming in. I just think we just have to spread it out a little bit and help our
So do you
people.
wanna do a
that are
brainstorm on
vulnerable.
that?
What's the brainstorm?
Spread out that money that would go to the leadership.
We don't have any leadership by law, he took it away.
Right, but.
So,
So then don't replace it.
Then don't replace it.
right, that's a brainstorm,
So
is do
stop
not,
all leadership stipends.
because by law, I mean, we don't have any leadership stipends from the governor,
Basically,
we
we're
have to zero it out.
subsidizing, we would be subsidizing.
Don't subsidize the leadership stipends, that's a brainstorm.
That punctuates though what I suggested,
Yes.
and that is you create an expectation, suddenly you can't fund it, everything evaporates.
Yep.
And yet the expectation is still there among our staff, and as you know, it's difficult for you folks as well as us to try to reconcile that with people.
Cause we're sitting here having to reconcile this back to a ratifiable,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's the role that we're put into, is not necessarily, even though I use
Well-
myself as an example, it's not always my viewpoint personally,
Right.
it's sitting
And-
here as a membership.
The interesting thing, I mean, not interesting because it is the fact, in order to qualify for the advanced professional endorsement, you have to show a leadership role.
But you don't have to get paid for it.
But you don't have to get paid for it, right? But in the future, those things could become tied. I mean, not that I would advocate for, you know, making some of those roles mandatory, but
The way that I look at it too, with these leadership stipends, is here, the state was funding them. Now, here, the district's gonna fund them, but really, it's our local taxpayers that is subsidizing them. I just have a hard time with that.
Once upon a time, we actually used to do leadership in buildings without getting paid extra for it. I can remember those days, and now there is this expectation that if you want me to do something extra, you have to pay me for it, which is a little bit, of a conundrum.
I feel like we're at that fun point where it's like, let's get something up, like, it's not positional, but it becomes positional at some point, like, where it's like, okay, what is the offer? Are we willing to take that to the membership? What is the final? So.
Well, we started
go
with scenario
through
3,
these?
so are you saying there's no more brainstorms? Does anybody else have any more brainstorms about this? Okay, then let's start with scenario 3, that's the first brainstorm, so then, if everyone could look at this piece, take a picture, or get it up on your computer or something, take a picture of your cell phone or something.
Do you want me to just read the, like, checklist things instead of getting that off of there, so we can.
Well, I'm gonna put
continue
it up
with
for
that?
a second, just so that people can see it, and then we can go back to it.
Got that, and Bill Ryder's forehead, all in one nice picture.
Oops. Okay,
We'll go back to 3.
so this is, we're discussing the interests. Can you remind us of our interests before we start getting like?
We have a lot of them. Recruit and retain staff, be competitive with our neighbors, honor discussions from 2021, honor work of teachers for the distinguished work. It needs to be sustainable, equitable, value, it needs to show that we value all staff, and we're trying to get to a livable wage.
Okay, what are our solutions? So we're gonna start, let's apply the standards. So here are standards. What do we move first? What do we move first? Is it
We
ratified?
put as it ratifiable at second, we're good, we still
Okay.
felt legal was number 1.
Okay, so is it legal?
Yes.
This scenario
Can
3.
we put it up there now so that we can look at it, and then we'll just read
Can you
the
split
standards off?
screen?
No. Well, I mean, I don't know how to. Do you know how to on this? I don't know how to.
Laura has the standards.
Yeah. So is it legal? Yes. Is it ratifiable? Board or LEA?
I don't think so.
Don't want to go any farther, if that's the case.
I just don't think it is.
Why not?
I don't think the percent is high enough, and I think if you took away the leadership dollars, and that's.
I think the
it's
sudden
not
decrease of the
considerable.
leadership is a hardship. I mean, I think that.
Okay, so let's cross that one off. Not, or we can write not ratifiable or something next to it too, Lisa, just so we remember, cause one week to the next sometimes is. For our Nichols 8th brain, it's. Okay, next one is this scenario 3 plus, using 600.
Basically half of the medical for salary enhancement and half for medical.
That would drop that 845 or whatever it is to like a 745, which would be about 700,000. So that would bump it up to the.
What did you just say?
So if you took the 825, I have to pull it back up, and dropped that $100 to $725, I think that came out to about 700,000, which would cover the 2% difference in the 3 to 5%.
It would do more than that, right?
It'd be a
1%
little
is,
more.
is 289, do I remember that right?
So we probably wouldn't even have to drop it a full 100,
No.
but say you pay
750?
5%, the rest would be left towards the increase in the medical, premium stipend thingamajigger instead of 825.
Where did the medical land on your survey?
What, third priority, I think it was on here?
Out of 3 or 4 or how
We
many?
had 5.
Okay, 5.
And
People
we-
know the medical is coming, they expect some increase in medical, but it was not, they preferred the salary over the medical significantly.
And the salary allows you to buy up on the medical if you want. It almost becomes stipend-esque, because you can just turn and buy up or do whatever you want, right?
Mhm.
If we went with the other scenario where funding full medical, how many dollars are involved with people who would be doing buyout? You know,
How much did we say 1% costs?
289.
So we'd take 600,000 of the 1.2, so yeah, half of it, put it towards the
That was why I
salary
came up with that
schedule.
calculation.
Yeah, the 600.
But I brought it in my head last
And
time.
then
we met.
whatever that will cover to the,
Right,
not 825 or
right,
845.
and that
cover
other
750.
6 has to pick up 9.8% right out of the gate, just because that's the increased cost, right? And then whatever's left of that 6 after the 9.8,
No, it's a total of, 1.4 or something. The 9.8 is already taken.
oh, the
out, that
9.8 is
1.2.
already taken out.
Yeah,
and
so the
1.2
600
oh,
would just get
okay.
left to
The 600 would
increase.
just be left, gotcha, for buy up or,
Mhm. So
Okay.
we'd be putting more than half of the medical monies that came in still into enhancing medical benefits with that.
Okay, I would question whether that's legal, but even if we go with your scenario of it, I really question whether the board would have, knowing the intent that Brian and I have shared with the legislators, I really question whether the board would approve the negotiation.
I would agree with that.
What do you think about the board?
The reason I'm asking this question, I'm trying to figure out the balance between what they're suggesting and the fact that we're gonna have some people, because of the new scenario, who will be having less out of pocket for insurance costs, which means there'll be money in their pocket.
Yep.
Right? And trying to figure out
Mhm.
where those dollars are and who's gonna get them.
Mhm.
Because what you're trying to do is move that medical money into salary across the board, if I understand.
yeah, true, correct.
The other scenario isn't across the board necessarily, but I don't have a good feel for what the distribution looks like.
That's a great question, Bob. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how that looks. I mean, literally, when I budget for medical, if you're a 30-hour plus employee as a classified or you're a teacher, I budget effectively this year, our contribution of dental and our contribution of medical, which was about $600 this year, it's like $589 or, so I budget that for if you're eligible, okay? There are definitely employees who don't take advantage of that, right? Their husband on TRICARE, or they have that and they don't choose, but I still budget for it, and that's how I'm just so you know, I'm budgeting the same way, taking that 600 and going up to the 825 and sort of doing the same. If you're eligible, that's what we're budgeting, and knowing that, not sure what people's choices will be, but it's budgeted for, that's all.
Yep.
So enrollment numbers in the buyout plan, I have 218, in the driver, 292, in the HSA, 32.
So I think there would be quite a few who are on the driver, and if they're only covering themselves, would certainly take advantage of it because it's a better plan and.
And it costs them nothing.
And it costs them nothing.
Out of pocket.
Definitely what the choices would be for families, you know, cause there's some people who cover families and they do the buyout, but just because maybe they really need to have that better plan if there's a family situation, or others do the driver because of the lower premium. It, you know, sort of depends, but definitely we would have people taking advantage of that, I would think, but to do like a cost analysis,
Yeah.
it'd be tough to do.
I worry a little bit about the fact that we have to submit a report back to legislators about how we're using this money, and hate for us to be here next year wishing we would have done this differently because we've lost the money. I mean, that's a
Once
very
again,
real
you might
situation.
walk into that trap of creating an expectation that you're gonna have to back out of someone.
How much, what is our total amount that's allocated for medical per unit? Well, the
$19,000.
$19,000.
Yeah.
And if we up it to 825 from the 600 number, we're looking at $9,900 a person is what we're paying a year.
It's like over 10,000 a year. The state plan right now is like 12,500 per person, so we're still under that threshold.
Right.
So currently, if we didn't change anything, not saying that that's what I want, we are paying above, or the state is giving us now with this new money above what we are already putting in.
The state has given us, and they don't do it by person, they do it by
Yes.
funding, so it makes it, they're
That's what
giving
I-
us that extra 6,000, it's on that one, on the previous slide.
It's 19,000
Can you do that for me?
per unit.
Thank And
you.
that's where I'm like, I hear what you're saying with the intent of it, I hear what we're saying,
Is it there?
and that's just me personally
Is that it, Brian?
disagree with
It's
the fear
looking for the
behind.
plus.
Right there.
Yeah, but you don't, I'm not trying to be mean, Laura, but you don't have to sign your name on it.
Completely.
It
Yeah.
really, and when things come down and then we get called out, which we have been called out already in my last 6 years, then I'm the one, and not me, but most likely somebody else in this room is going to be on the hot seat when you get called out in the legislature. Well, Lakeland did it this way, and I would rather myself talk about, like, continue the leadership money or do something with that, but still use medical for medical and address the people that are getting the money like Bob talked about.
At least give us a year to see what that reporting looks like and what the
Yeah.
feedback coming back from the
And
legislators.
what retribution towards other districts that didn't do it. There's 20 districts now that are gonna be, as of last week, that are looking at going on the state insurance plan. So there used to be 0, then it went to 4, and now it's like 20 districts.
What's our reason for that?
Because the insurance is so good.
Just because of
And
that?
then also it's a one-time that the governor's giving that 76 million to buy in, and he's not doing that again. So it's like you do it,
If
lose
you
all
don't
your.
go now, you'll never have a chance.
You'll never have a chance because of the buy-in. It doesn't make sense for us, Twin Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls.
Idaho Falls is gonna go.
Yep, and Blackfoot's going now, and there's American Falls, you just said American
No,
Falls.
Idaho
Said
Falls.
Idaho.
District
American
91.
Falls, and District American Falls looks like they're gonna go in, because the
I don't know how they
ins-
afford it, but I guess they're doing
yeah.
Okay, then that one sounds like if it's with the medical, I mean, I guess I would, we could always brainstorm other ways to come up with the other 2%, but if it's with the medical and if it's not ratifiable, it sounds like same thing from our side where it's not ratifiable.
Yeah.
We don't need to.
Strike it.
I think we're gonna be in a caucus meeting.
Well, you know,
It just giggles at me talking to myself. No, I think.
And so, is that, what's this
That was
one?
part of the 5% was within that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the second person.
Okay, so what about, scenario 3 with drop days for the fund balance, MOU for doing this scenario 3, then using drop days for the, if the fund balance stay, which it will, stays up, then it's one time. I mean, I guess I could change, not even the fund balance, but just beginning of the year, whoever's here, it's not even gonna depend on fund balance, cause he already has a good idea about that, cause we already know that enrollment's gonna stand for one more year. So instead of fund balance, it could be drop days are assigned to the staff that's here next year. To be paid out. With, instead of an ongoing percentage. The point behind that, you guys, the why, is that if enrollment funding isn't a for sure thing, but we wanna give our people the money, then what about doing the 3% now, and then giving 5 drop days or whatever we figure out would be? Like if you guys are thinking we can't go less than 5% for what our overall, well, so just hear me out, this is brainstorming, but this 1% is 287. So 2 more percentage is 575. So if he has 575, that's equal to 2. So my brains would be like MOU to do drop days divided by how much staff you have with 575,000. Meaning that they get, it doesn't have to be that amount, I'm just saying it, whatever amount we decide on.
Put the 2% into the
Well,
drop
yeah,
days.
but, yeah.
Whatever it
I think
is,
where you're headed there is 3% is what we've already said is
doable.
gonna work out doable, and use a figure of 2%, in the statement.
Or like 1% goes to leadership, because that seems like it's important to their membership, and 1% is drop days. And so the total compensation ends up being like the 5%.
5%,
Yeah, and I can tell you that Post Falls is like, they said, again, it might have changed, because I did talk to her over a week ago, but they are like, we can't go over more than 4, like, there's no way we can get over 4. So I think 5% would be meeting our competitive with neighboring
I
districts.
think they've had some scenarios put on the table over 4.
Yeah.
From the last week that we had
I'm just telling you from the
conversations.
superintendent's standpoint of what they can do, and their levy is a lot less than our levy.
Yeah.
Which we have to pass.
And Coeur d'Alene is not even looking that good.
I don't know, have they even started? I was like,
The
talking
drop
there,
days
it's
are
such a slow
from the point of view that it feels like you're getting a bonus, but just like a bonus, it is not a permanent
Right.
addition to your funds.
Yeah,
But
that's
neither are
correct,
these
that's
dollars
correct,
we're
but that's
talking
what I
No,
about.
but I just mean,
My purpose.
if you're the person voting on the salary that they're hoping to maintain for their career and further on, you can only take so many drop days before you, why don't you just give me a percent increase?
Well, they need to contact our legislator and say, why don't you give us a permanent solution funding formula instead of keep doing this 1-year enrollment funding?
Are we saying, or is, I guess the budget saying that 5% is not possible?
Well,
The 5% across the board?
If we knew that enrollment funding was staying,
Well, but we always say that. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's always what if, and it just seems like we continue to say that.
I would say, long-term, passing that AP through and doing a 5%, no. I think that would
Long
be
term, we've already
irresponsible.
decided that I don't think that's going to be long term. I think we're on the table that we're gonna have to look at that long term. And that's why we even put it in the negotiated agreement in year 5, we're gonna be talking about it, because it's such a big jump to 11.
but that's not what the language says. The language actually says that we're gonna talk about what the criteria is for you to continue to get that year 5 amount. Because this law says that once you get them, that's where you stay. And we're saying if you're gonna get all that money, you have to still be distinguished. That was the language. It
Right.
wasn't about whether or not the money was gonna be there.
But I think what Jason was saying is it sounds like there's more of a group consensus right now that even prior to the 5 years, knowing that this is a yearly discussion, we need to be having some yearly discussions with our membership about how that AP is impacting our salary, am I wrong on that? Or so I don't think he's saying wait until the end of those 5 years, I think he was saying, we acknowledge that that's gonna be something we have to continue to make some adjustments for. Looking at the here and now, is there any way to fulfill a 5% increase in our budget in the current here and now with that AP right now? That's what I,
Don't do steps in lane card.
Is that a brainstorm?
Sure.
Brooke, how many people get paid off the salary schedule? What's the number?
What do you mean?
Certified staff,
Because it was 285.
285.
I'd say grab and just another brainstorm on, is pulling, so without the leadership funds, pulling from the 861, pull the unknowns and the other needs to fulfill that gap then. Cause that's not our reserve fund, that's not tapping into our reserve fund, that's excess money on top of.
Well, and even the reserve
Right.
fund's gonna be projected over the 15.
Over the 16.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that could be a brainstorm too. I mean, you could go into it because the projection is gonna be over the allotted amount, the goal that's in the board policy.
But that's one time money, not
Yeah,
all.
I wanna understand your goal, your end goal. Are you suggesting that 5% money increase is your bottom line? On salaries?
I don't know if it's, I think anything less is gonna be hard to pass from what I'm hearing from everyone. And that's not coming from us going out and preaching anything, it's just with the current situation with everything out there.
So I guess I'm confused, like, if we really, if other districts around us don't pass through any aid money, zero aid money, and they're gonna do a 4 to 5%, that means people aren't getting that additional aid money, how are we gonna make sure, like, we're not getting credit in this district, I don't feel like we're getting credit for doing that pass-through money of aid. So I guess another
Well, they want
brainstorm is
that and
completely get rid of APE and put all the money into the base so we can do a larger, which they already said is unratifiable, but I think at some point we have to get credit for us being the only district in the state that's completely passing through APE money. And we're not getting any credit for that right now.
Well, I think it's kind of reckless to put any kind of stipends in the negotiated agreement, and we have the APE in there. But my brainstorm would maybe be 3.5, no leadership stipends at all. Because like I said, it's the same group of people, and they still keep the APE, but it's across the board, 3.5 equitable for everybody in the district.
But again, those leadership positions are not equitable. They are not equitable. I mean, you're getting people with leadership that are doing 1, 2, or 3 things throughout the year, whereas other people are doing it every single day.
How do you balance that?
I don't know.
Jason?
That's.
Because if, a person takes enough initiative to move into one of those leadership positions or, after the 8 money or whatever, and somebody else chooses not to, that creates something that's not equitable.
Right.
But it's by choice in both cases.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think people have to accept and recognize that and not say, well, he's getting more money than I am when I've been here the same number of years that he has. Well, yeah, but.
I don't think we're gonna solve the equitability on the leadership funds. My concern right now is, and I think we brought that up every year, and I think it's gonna be a committee that has to be committed to sit down and really have that conversation for a full year, cause it is such a big conversation on those, and whether that leads to a conversation of, okay, they go away and they get dropped, or that's, okay, here's the formula, here's the application, here's how you have equitable access to make those choices. I just worry about the harsh stop on them. I think anything has to be, and that's where I'm at with the AP money too, like I am totally like, those have to be continued conversations. It is that expectation that is set currently, you have to process people into that procedure, we had to do that with coming out of the freeze years, like, we've had to do those things, and that stuff can happen.
How do you let people down easily?
Yeah, how do you, well, and how do you just tamper those expectations a little bit? How do you, well, and how do you increase their understanding to get to that point? And I think that's a task that we have to jointly do as a DO, as a membership, as all of those sides. But that is a longer rollout and task than I think than we're at in the here and now. So that concerns me to drop it at this moment.
Well,
is my thing.
So last year at this time, we were aware that those leadership stipends were gonna go away. And we put APE in there, that was part of the discussion, is for those folks. And I've also sat down, I've talked to some employees who said, okay, I'm getting this in leadership stipends, and I'm getting this in APE. And in 5 years, oh my, I'm gonna double what I'm getting in leadership stipends. And so, I really feel like, I mean, in order to get APE, you have to have that leadership role. And so, I almost feel like it's kind of double dipping myself. The state put it so they could, do the advanced professional endorsement, and it's gone away. And the district and taxpayers should not be subsidizing it when we are the only district in this area that did APE.
Well, you're gonna find out with that APE too, that we're already getting word that there's districts that are just pretty much automatically passing all their teachers through it to get the funds. So, I mean, there's gonna be, I think we're doing it in a legit way.
Right.
But there's other districts that are going up and saying, oh yeah, you're distinguished, here you go, check it off, check it off, check it off, so that they can get the money. That's the animal the state has created, because I don't think they're doing it right. I love that they start thinking about the middle rung to the upper end people, because for so long, for the last 15 years, it's been the base, the base, the base, the base, and everybody else can't move, because we're spending so much extra dollars on the base, funding that base, and now we don't have it. So I love the intent.
But it's not.
But it's an animal.
No joking.
That's too much of it.
It's like, so I get it, I get it, I totally understand.
Well, it's 6:10, we
How
wanna
about,
take
would this be a
a
good
break?
time, maybe take a break, maybe talk just a little bit? And
Sure.
Sound okay?
Yep, I will shut the video off until we're back.
Will you explain that to me?
So we're gonna caucus, which means both parties are going to have separate meetings. We'll come back and record again. Okay, we're recording again. We're back from caucusing. And I just wanted Brian to be able to explain, we kind of talked before we left about the APE money. And I just wanted Brian to explain how much, he kind of explained it to our group, so I thought it was a good understanding for people. Here where it says certified APE rung pass-through, that versus, how much, so can you explain that, Brian, to people?
Well, that's the estimated cost just of our current AP teachers. If we have more, that would go up. But it's the same number that I'm generating the revenue with, so it's the same number you're generating the cost with. So at least it's an apples to apples comparison. The revenues are only 504,000 on the previous screen. The costs are 526 because the weighted average is not a perfect pass-through, but that's what it is.
Which that's a separate issue we need to address, just because in negotiated agreement, we just said it would be cost neutral. And so right now it's costing us 20-some thousand, because this 503 minus
Would be the impact on revenues.
526.
And that, but with the,
23,000, okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
but-
so, but,
What I wanted to equate that to is this 526 is equal to 2%, like, oops, sorry. This 2% right here, estimated 2% increase for us for, right here. It really, I think we need to make sure that everyone's really clear that that pass-through money for APE, instead of putting it into the general pot and just spreading it out, with people, it really equates to 2%. 526 and 575, it's close to a 2% is what it equates for. So whatever we're doing, negotiating, bargaining on, we really need to add, if we're gonna continue to flow through the 8 money at 100%, it needs to equate with adding 2% on to.
And that was discussed
percentage.
last year, saying that we can't spend it twice, guys. So if you want the bigger increase, then you don't pass it through. If you want it to pass through for those interests that were talked about, well, still, that's where the revenue.
So in essence, you have 100 certified staff who are going to get 2% greater increase than the rest of the.
Coeur d'Alene
staff.
hasn't started negotiating yet.
But what we want is to not lose sight of the fact that money's there. It kind of has become like, we want you to give it to us, but we don't want to talk about how it impacts everything and the overall picture, so just equating it to increases, it's just a little bit under that 2%.
Coeur d'Alene hasn't started yet, but they said, they'd probably end up between 3 and 5, but we can't give much because the 88 to 80E enrollment is still not permanent, and that's right in the text, so we're not the only district that's doing that way. Haven't heard from Post Falls yet. So.
I think intent from all sides, though, is that continues to be permanent. I mean, governor's office, legislators they've talked to,
Governor
IEA,
vetoed the law.
because of specific language in there, which he said.
I know, but
It
that was
wasn't
a-
to veto enrollment fully. I mean, even he has said, like, we have to continue the enrollment fully. It was more to make it.
He kind of pulled.
I was on a
the-
webinar with the governor, that's not what he said. So,
So I guess we're gonna have to go back originally, and what's the intent of the 8? Is it to pay for good teachers? And what is the end goal there? Is it because we want distinguished teachers in our district? Or do we want to just have general fund where now we drop our IPLP down to 10 pages instead of 42 and everybody gets the same increase?
I don't think that's what we were necessarily saying, Jason. We just want this group to be cognizant of the fact that in addition to the things that you are asking for, there is that 2% that's going.
Yeah.
It has to be part of the conversation.
and
I agree.
to your point, I think over time, maybe it's 95% of the flow through, or 90% or 80% or whatever it's gonna cover the actual cost of the flow through, like what Brian was talking about. At some point, because it is flow through, Lakeland could get all the distinguished teachers because everyone that's distinguished is gonna wanna get here because it's the only district in the state that pays for distinguished teachers. So at some point, Lakeland will have only distinguished teachers and it'll be flowing through and it could all be perfect. But
Well,
right now,
that's-
you're just
that's
on a
what I
ladder.
say. So what is the goal for the 8 money in the districts, in I guess your guys' superintendent's view, or the school board's view?
Well, we've been completely supportive of
Right.
flowing it through. The only reason I brought it up was when we're talking about the big picture, we can't talk about, we want you to fund leadership dollars even though the state's not giving you revenue for it, and we want you to do this without at least acknowledging that there is a 2% increase in dollars going to the salary schedule, but it's just going to some people. That's all I was saying. It has to be part of the whole picture.
Because you said you don't think you can get this ratified without
I
being
don't
at
know what your
5%. Well,
constituents do.
if Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls are doing 5% and they don't flow through 8, then we're really getting a 7% increase in our district. For some people, for distinguished teachers.
I think, Jason, the goal of those, both the leadership and the funding is laudable in that it's designed to reward people who put out the extra effort. wanna be recognized for that, deserve to be recognized for the work they're doing and so on and so forth.
Certainly.
And
Nobody
longevity.
denies,
Right.
that that's the case, and certainly, from the district's perspective, we acknowledge that and say that's the right thing to do. The problem enters, like everything, in the details, and the situation that we now find ourselves in, where, you have some folks who really want a big bump on their regular salary schedule, and probably they're deserving of that. But you also want this over here maintained into the future, and we're just not seeing a way to have it, how that can happen.
Yeah.
So, I think as Dr. Meyer suggested, we may look at the 5% level, which was what you suggested was important to get to the bottom line. It's a matter of how do we put pieces of that together.
To that point, can we do the next brainstorm, which looks at that? That next scenario, the next brainstorm would be basically 5% for everybody and 7% for 8 people, for teachers that are distinguished, because it would be 3% for everybody, 2% for drop days in the fall. So everyone would be getting, that's one-time money, but everyone would be having 5%. Then everyone who's on 8 is equal to basically another 2% for their salary. So that would be, I think, a win-win, because it's the 5% to get it ratified, and then all the 8 people that put in the extra time that are distinguished, they would be basically having almost a 7% increase. So can we go through the?
And so the quick math on that is kind of the game Brian and I were playing. So it would take 4 drop days to create 2%. Because 2 drop days on a 190-day or 200-day contract would be 1%, right? So it would be 4 drop days, just to throw some math up there so people can see it. That's roughly what that would be, it's 4 drop days.
Thank you.
Is it legal?
Yep.
Is it ratifiable and more? Board says yes.
That's the full meal deal that you just.
Right, yep, that's what I just described.
So is that exclusive of the leadership?
Sorry?
Is that exclusive then of the leadership 1%, so that's not part of the consideration?
Right, we're just looking at this line right here.
Most of, if I understood what Brooks said earlier, most of the folks who would be involved with leadership are also on the
I would say about a good 80% of them are.
So it's kind of.
Like, I was trying to just think
Molds
through our
together.
building, and it's like, there's a lot under that 8-year
Makes
mark.
sense, though, doesn't it? I mean,
I'm like, there's a lot that are under that 8-year mark, that are on leadership teams, that are on
Yeah.
PBIS teams, that are on MTSS teams. There's a lot of people, and if you look at,
But that's your building.
Yeah,
so
those
Yeah,
come
and
out of
that's-
building funds.
Well,
Yeah.
so let's just take one at a time, but to Laura's point, I do wanna say, that could also be a discussion of, if you take 1% away from drop days and do 2 drop days, then you can keep leadership in, and because leadership is a 1%. Right,
If it just isn't
1%.
to everybody, it goes to just.
yeah, I
some.
mean, if that was important to it just is that, it's really, their survey shows 8 and then on the base, so that takes care of that.
the discussion about the drop days scares me a little bit, just because we've all had conversations with our members, and I don't know that that'd be ratifiable. Honestly.
after so many years of drop days, they go, well, this is there, and, yeah.
longer. Right, it gives us, the one thing about it this year is I think it gives us the one more year for the governor to either do
Go to
what you
enrollment.
think he's going to
Mhm.
do, or the governor to do what maybe he indicated the superintendent was going to do. And it's just, there's no guarantee.
I will remind everyone, because I sat on the committee, when they were going to go to the enrollment funding based on the first iteration 2 years ago before COVID, Lakeland lost except for Orfino where the state hospital is and there was a funding. Lakeland was the absolute worst loser.
Yeah.
We lost the most amount of money out of any other district in the entire state, out of 115 districts and then charter schools. So it is not something, in my opinion, for Lakeland, it's not something to mess around with, to be like hoping it goes through. Cause that would be,
He looked you, the superintendents, in the eye and said, if you support my endeavors with the insurance fund, I will support enrollment funding.
And then he
the
vetoed it.
House passed it and the Senate passed it, and we were sitting in a meeting and Becky about had a heart attack because the governor vetoed it after looking them in the eye and saying he was gonna support it, so. And I hear what you're saying, but it does give us one more year for them to actually solidify the funding without, having to worry about. The last thing I wanna do is have to hand out pink slips because we put too much money in the salary schedule that we're not gonna get from the state. And we don't have 100% guarantee that that money's coming.
Yeah, I think our objective is, to try to reach out to you and meet your basic goals as have been identified by your membership, but not put the district in a tenuous position going forward. For example, allowing us to go through another year and see what's gonna happen with funding and that sort of thing. And if the hammer drops, and we don't continue with enrollment, then we have a fallback position. If we launch everything that we currently have, and the hammer drops, now we're suddenly in that untenable position of having to say, we can't afford everybody we have on staff. None of us wanna get there.
Well,
So
isn't
we're
that
trying to
part,
find, the happy medium.
isn't that part of the reason why we also, our goal is to have 16.6% in the fund balance? If that was to happen.
But then,
Then you have
that
some.
turns out to be one-time money. I mean, it can
Right.
afford you one more year beyond that, perhaps. But then you're still at the cliff where you don't wanna be.
I mean, best case scenario would be that it gets signed into law next year and we get to move forward, and then this conversation next year is a little bit different, but his vetoing that bill is causing a little bit of anxiety.
what are your guys' thoughts that you guys had? That was our thought. What did you guys have for thoughts?
My head is very stuck on, and I will just be totally honest on this.
But not for just you, but like, what was your guys' caucus, like, what were you guys kind of?
We're at that, that 5%, I just, with the AP funds and those leaderships and just looking at, and I get it, but I was like, the 861,000 is right there. Yes, everything's one-time money, everything is, we can always relook at next year, okay, then what does coaching have to look like? Okay, now what does AP have to look like? But our reserve fund is healthy and has been it's very healthy, which is a positive thing. We have the 861,000 there. That's where I was like, there's funds that are there. I think that's where, or it was the other thing for us to look at to keep that buffer is that the insurance money covering the 9.8 and then not doing 825, doing like a 750 will cover the 2%.
And I just think, just so we know, and I know it's easy for us as we get through this process that it gets into positional, because this is no, the interest.
Yeah, it becomes positional.
Yeah.
Well, but here's my concern, is I have been, as I present information, with the intent of our process, I provide you guys more information and more about that than I know of any other business manager in the state.
Yep.
I am way more transparent, trying to tell you that. Now, a lot of people aren't gonna do that, because when you get a positional, it's like, well, we're gonna do here, here, and try to meet in the middle, right? I'm not doing that, I'm sort of saying what I think meets our interest.
Right.
So if we're gonna get the position like that, I'm gonna have to start saying, well, we can do the 0.5% guys, and we can start playing the game. That's what I feel like we're doing right now, quite honestly, we
Yeah.
lost our interest completely. Because one of the interests is it sustainable?
But ultimately, by you giving us that number, then you're making that a position.
No, I'm giving you the information, and
Right.
our standards are is that you trust the numbers.
Well, yeah, but that's what we're
Right.
saying, we're looking at the 5 years and how we've grown in the money that we have in there right now and the money that's sitting up there on the table still, and that's where we're saying.
Well,
But
why
every
can't we?
district but wait, we have to step back.
I can't put every dollar in increased money into salaries, because we have other costs that go up too.
And that's the thing, wait, just stop for 1 second. One thing I just wanna clarify. When you're talking about the fund balance and the fund balance going up, every other district in this state is in a similar situation. Lake Pend Oreille is gonna be up to 32%, because there's ESSER dollars that get rolled in and people have been supplanting and moving. So talking about what the fund balance is from the ESSER from last year and this year is not a fair comparison to what our philosophy has been the prior 4 years since I've been there before this. So that's not a fair comparison to Brian at all, with that being said. I just wanna make that very clear, the fact that the money's going in. The other thing to keep in mind, which Bob will attest to, this school board is wanting to make some decisions about facilities and capital projects that he does not have any control over, nor does the superintendent. So this school board has already taken a capital projects list and decided on your motion, nothing, I'm not saying bad or good, I'm just saying completely out of the superintendent and the CFO's hands. They made a motion and they decided where all the capital project money went. And I suppose if that's the precedent, that's going to happen again. Unbeknownst to my recommendation or the CFOs or the facility directors. I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, I'm just saying they are very much more into the decision making of that. So for Brian and I to make a decision to get rid of, to give too much away for salaries, we don't have some control over that I felt like we had before. So I would be, if I was gonna stay the superintendent, I would be super gun shy. And I'm trying to make the best decision, even though I'm not gonna be here, to give the next person the best case scenario to start with. So I feel like we have to be very clear about that part from Brian's perspective.
Because the list of facility needs is small. And the plant facility is, going away.
Well, I guess the argument then would be, we just replaced all our roofs, and we heard that at the table, and we have to replace roofs, and we have, and don't get me, I mean, please hear me, I'm just telling you, this is what's out there, is that it's always that. And even with the roofs, and even with all of that, we're still doing very well.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
not a
great,
question
and I'm
of
not saying we
this is
shouldn't be.
honest.
I mean, I don't like being negative $12,666 in the hole either. That's a scary situation.
And we're-
But I
We're really
just,
not doing well facility-wise, to tell you the truth. We have still.
I didn't say facility.
Okay, I thought you were just talking about
I
financial.
said district financially is doing very well. I don't think anyone can argue that. And I just think, I think an extra 2% with all the cost of living and everything there, I think we really need to try to get to it. I think to look at our staff and who are leaving the district because they can't afford to live here anymore, it's a problem. And I'm just telling you what I'm hearing out there. I talk to people every single day. And I hear it every single day, and I don't know, I think to go to 3%, I think
But it's not just 3%, we're moving, the APE money is part of that money. That's salary-based apportionment that's going to a dedicated set of people who we've said that we're gonna do that, but that's part of the equation. And when we first said this, I knew this was gonna happen, and why I was here, I was the only one. And I had a lot of heartburn last year about it, because this is exactly what was gonna happen, is that we're gonna want to double spend it. We're gonna say, well, we're gonna pass it through and still give us a raise equal to what every other district is going out there, but our revenues aren't, we're spending that
But
twice.
it's, APE money aside, you could also go back to the state mandating that we increase our base for the last 10 years, and that was there as well. So, I mean, it's almost, I get what
think
you're
there's
saying.
I hear where you're coming, and I'm like, I want you to make sure to understand where the question, where the things are too, because when you say like, okay, if the APE wasn't there, we'd be at 5%, I will tell you that our teachers would say, if the APE's not there, we should be at 7 or 8. Coeur d'Alene, they're looking back at past history things and numbers that people saw increases on that were significant, and they feel like we're behind. Now, that's debatable here and there. When I look across the pay scale at mine to Coeur d'Alene's and what I could be making next year if I was at the same level of experience, it is less on the salary. It's a couple $1,000s less. And so that's where people are looking and going, hold on. So that's where it's like, we're not saying that that's not a true, correct comparison right now, that if somebody got 5% without the APE, we should get 3% with the APE. People think we're behind, and they think we're behind because of the years of the roofs, and because of the years of the facilities, and because of, and we
I don't think
understand
our salary
that.
schedule's that much different than Coeur d'Alene Post Falls.
And here's the thing is it all comes out in a different understanding, and this is more just where people are looking too, so I was like, it is a struggle. I understand the 860 sitting aside for what these things are coming up for and what the board may want to spend on what our community sees. The teachers are sitting there going, when do we matter more than that? And they don't feel like that has happened for a significant amount of time, and I'm like, it's super uncomfortable to sit here and state this, because then I get that. But that is.
Unfortunate here, I think that
that's
the last
where
few
the
years, I
mentality
thought
is.
that we've done really well as a district and tried to move forward in a positive way, and of course, you know.
That is
no-
disappointing to me,
No,
and
no
I-
good deed goes unpunished.
We're
I think
and
it's
we're the
the
only
same
district that did
as
APE flow
only
through, now
district
we're
that
doing this,
APE
that's
step-
really disappointing.
AP flow through, and there's no credit for it at all. That's what
I
I'm
don't think
saying,
that
we're
it's
getting no
fair.
credit at all, so then why did we do it?
But I think also what you have to understand is that we're not battling just what we're doing, we're battling a state department that is coming out and saying, which we know is not accurate, and we understand the implications of that, is that we just got a 10% increase.
Okay, we did.
And we have 100%, like,
We know that.
yeah, we know that. But that is the mentality that we're battling on top of, like, the mentality that is created in these things that I'm sharing are not created because of things that we have done. They are created because of current scenario, because of cost of living, because of the State Department saying in their compounding, we are in a very hard battle right now, and that's where we're just going, we want to be in a battle. We are getting nailed by people daily going, you're not doing enough too, and so we want to be, we don't know how to get to that point of them being able to ratify this as well. But I know that at 3%, I mean, we sit in here and
You
it's
drop off
tough
your
enough,
pass-throughs.
we're gonna get things too.
It's 3% on the base, every teacher is gonna at least go down a step, right? So that's $1,400, $1,400,
In addition to. the
in addition to the 3%. In addition to 4 drop days. It's not insignificant,
No, it's not at all. I don't.
but I guess it
think
is, because we don't care about teachers evidently.
I
from your
didn't say that
position.
you guys didn't care about teachers, and I didn't say that we haven't worked together. So I would appreciate at the table with honesty and integrity too, of giving myself some grace that I'm speaking for what people are sharing with us as well. I'm not trying to attack. It's not easy to sit and speak for the things that we're being told as well.
So are you telling us that you want 5% on the base salary schedule plus all the APE money
And leadership.
and leadership money? And whatever else can be extracted through the process?
$1.5 million to medical.
Is that what you're telling us?
I still have said that I think the medical can be shifted differently. That's where I see that part. I think that the leadership is a discussion at a separate area. That's where I've seen it. I don't know what other brainstorms are.
I don't think I heard an answer to my question.
So yes, a 5%, but with the enhanced medical benefits not being at the 1.18, with those being at 600. So keeping it within that and moving that 600 down to the increase. And that's because of my understanding of, and that's, I understand we're gonna have to put a report to, I understand all those things.
Frankly, I misunderstood what Jason said a while ago there, because I understood it was 5% overall. And that's what we attempted to put together.
I just honestly don't know. We can try it.
I mean, maybe I misread what you said, but that was the way I understood it.
Well, I was saying 5% with everything else in there. Brian's number 3, but raise it to 5%.
So even with Brian's number 3 with steps and lanes, that 3% is actually more than 4% for each person. Just steps down, not even lanes. People who move steps and.
Let me make sure I understand him. You're saying your scenario was this scenario, and then,
That increases.
but the 2% instead of being drop days goes down to the permanent.
Yeah.
So he's,
Yeah, that's not the way I understood it, but yeah, I understand it now.
yeah, so what I think
Thank you
he's,
very much.
and the reason that I said the drop days, I mean, honestly, the reason I did the drop days is I don't feel secure in the fact, and I feel like Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls are gonna have similar, and they're like our biggest competition right next to us. I think they're gonna have a similar take on, this is not it's set in stone, so to put it into the salary schedule, people will still get 2%, but it gives us a year to do it. But, so we're saying this, regardless of what Laura said about, leadership, that's a separate deal, but this, I feel like we're saying the same thing. It's just one of us is saying, let's put it in permanently, and one of us is saying, let's do drop days, because I don't trust that they're gonna get that in place.
I do think, though, to clarify, when you do the drop days, that does include a higher medical than what we're saying is pull it from the medical, so putting it, but that's what ours is saying is pull it that
You didn't say
600,000
that.
from the medical.
Well, no, that was
You're-
kind of
I-
a discussion.
But why does it, we're saying pull it from this gray part at the bottom.
Okay, that's what I'm just, where the, yeah.
Yeah,
Medical will stay out.
that's what-
yeah, I
So
don't,
you
would
guys-
not want to
that
put the
is
next
a hard
superintendent
fast,
into
yeah.
that spot. Like, that is, in my opinion, I would vehemently tell the board, do not pass anything that takes it from the medical side. That's putting the new superintendent in a very bad legal precarious position, in my opinion.
And I think ultimately we all agree on that. I think there's some dollars there that, are gonna have to be dealt with, but yeah, it's,
No more
If-
moving forward.
if I'm a person writing those checks and I find out that the people that I'm writing those checks to aren't using that money for what it was intended for, I'm not gonna give them as much money. So that's common sense.
Yeah.
So I agree with that 100%.
Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls just came back and said, our last offer to our team was 5%, we will negotiate again tomorrow, but remember, we do not pass through the AP run. So, Coeur d'Alene is saying, I feel like we are definitely, if they're saying 3 to 5%, Post Falls is saying 5%, and neither one do AP, or does Coeur d'Alene still do half AP?
Yeah.
Half AP?
So we're still well above both.
We're above both of
When you
them.
look at all
Our
three.
medical is not as good, but I think this'll,
Well, that's the other thing I was
Both
gonna
of
add,
them.
is that a lot of people, with the exception of the people who only insure themselves and only do the driver plan, anybody else is gonna have money in their pocket also, and it's monthly in addition to these increases that we're talking about.
So I did your drop days because I'm slow, as my wife would be happy to share with you, especially with the checkbook. If you make $40,000 and you got 4 drop days in November and the $1,500 from the state, you'd get an extra $2,350 in your paycheck in November, which would be 5.9% of your annual salary. And if you made $72,000, the top of our salary schedule, it's less because as a percent of a larger number, $1,500, and it's essentially another $1,500 for 4 drop days. You'd get $3,000 additional dollars in your November check, and it would be 4.2% of your annual salary, not including other stipends or other cash that comes in. That's just off the salary schedule. That's what.
Because your daily rate of pay a day in the bigger thing is less percentage?
Your daily rate of pay is significantly bigger, but your divisor, the amount of money you're making is significantly larger. So as a percent, it's a smaller increase as a percent of what you make, but it's a bigger number. So 4.2% of the top of the salary schedule and 5.9%, that would just appear in that check that month on top of your regular salary.
It's if we put language, the 1,500 is going through to teachers, we know that's.
Right.
That's if we put
That's-
language to state it was paid in that November paycheck.
Right, I just made that up because that's where other
That's
things
where it
have
makes sense
appeared,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
drop days anyways. So I stuck them in the
Yes.
same spot to make it, and it's pre-Christmas, whatever, I don't know that when the state pays and how the district would or would not allot that money.
I think that helps Brooke, and because she does all the stipends in October, and she's busy in September, and then does the stipends in October, so for her, that's the most feasible, and then it's right before Christmas.
So, and I did super rough numbers, but I'm sure Brian, I'm playing with Brian's, the way Brian and I look at things real quick, which is $40,000 at the bottom of the salary schedule, which is probably a couple of bucks short of what it actually is. But divided by 190, and then multiplied by 4 is $842. And 72,000 on top of the salary schedule, divided by 190 and multiplied by 4 is $1,520 or something like that, so. And then both the bottom, the top, and the middle gets the $1,500 from the state. So I'm just looking at that number.
That other money.
Yeah, that other money, but for and I'm not, this isn't pulling the wool over my own membership's eyes, but it comes through your salary, it comes through your paycheck, so everybody just sees it as pay for being a teacher.
Correct.
Whether it comes from the state as a direct supportive thing, but the district doing the state a
It's
favor.
effectively more,
It's more pay.
yeah.
From the same people that provide most of our salaries, the state.
Yes, well, it's actually governor's COVID dollars.
Right.
We actually have to do a grant.
And it's one-time event, just like just like those drop days, it would be a
Yeah,
one-time
that
event.
$1,500 is one time for sure.
But it's, there's some numbers, because I need to see that just as an employee looking at numbers and looking at 8.5% inflation. I'm like, so what does that do to my check? Forget $8 if I qualify and those sorts of things. What do those things do for me? And as a percent, I'm that person. It makes sense to me. So 5.9 on the bottom and 4.2 at the top with 4 drop days and that state bonus or governor's COVID dollars. That's what it comes out to.
So if you pulled out, I don't think we wanna, I wouldn't suggest mixing the state COVID dollars in there because those are coming, I mean, we could do nothing.
Right, but a
Those
lot of
ones are
teachers are
coming.
gonna look at what their overall pay is for next year, and then it gets added back in, if not by you on a document, by them in their heads, just in terms of a raise for next year.
But as far as like to meet our, what
Right,
we're trying to
no,
get to
it's
is
not about that,
5%.
right, it's not about that, I agree.
Does the 4 drop days get us to the 5%? That's
Yeah,
without-
2 drop days is 1% of a 200-day contract, and it's only a 190. So two drop days is slightly more than 1% of anyone's paycheck, and so 4 of them is slightly more than 2% of anyone's paycheck. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, no, that's just for easy
Yeah.
calculations. So yes, it gets you to 5.1% or something like that, I guess, with the 3% over there. I don't know how it sells though.
One of the things that I was wanting to do is call like an open forum meeting with our members, just to talk about this kind of stuff. And I think that might be very helpful if we were to go in there with that scenario. We could talk about it, get a feel for what they wanted.
We discussed that whenever we go to take whatever the offer, whatever the proposal is that the team takes to them, is that the past few years, we've kind of done a north-south split. It's been in the mornings, people have had conversations ahead of time. We're really gonna push to have one general meeting, have a presentation that sort of explains out, so starting to identify those, here's the AP money, please understand it's this much, understand each component, and then have everybody ask questions before they're voting, so that we can
We're
start.
around it all the time, we know.
We get it.
We know how this stuff works,
Yeah.
but somebody that sees that, I mean, it just takes some education, and I think if this is what the group's gonna decide on, educating our members is gonna be mandatory, just from what I'm hearing. And I could be wrong, but.
Yeah, you'd have to include in your conversation just some of the information Brian shared about the, 825 defined benefit for medical and what
Yeah.
that might look like, so.
Yeah,
that
exactly,
they
and
understand.
the aid, like Becky was sharing, all of that, I mean, it's just, which, I feel we do a pretty good job about it, but when it comes as one proposal and people, what do they say? 3%.
That's all they see, yes, yeah.
And,
Everybody wants
and
that
there's no getting
individual
around that, and
status.
so that's why, I mean, educating in order to move forward, I mean, from what I hear right now, if they see that, it's gonna take us some, I think. And I have no problem going and educating. I sent the email last week to all the members that I wanted to do an open forum, anybody who had questions, because like Laura stated earlier, the IBB team's we've been getting slammed, pretty good. And,
Well, it doesn't help when the state's touting a 10% increase,
and
and
that's,
I think
that's all.
that means 10% more in their pockets, and that's not.
Well, and they don't fully understand drop days, that, that's one-time money that the district can do, but it's not sustainable necessarily, and so it's just getting everybody out there on the same page, let them ask any question, which I'm scared to death about, but I think if we have our team there and our committee there, I think we can do a pretty good job, but, I honestly don't know how they're gonna respond, I honestly don't.
Yeah, but the governor definitely put a little bit of a crimp in our plans this year when he vetoed that without any notice that that was gonna happen.
So I think if this group is, in order to move forward, I don't know what we do. Do we vote on this? Do we wait and do I try to have that meeting and see what our members are feeling, or how do we want to proceed?
Well, I would say in the essence of time is we all here come to a consensus that even if some people are like this, like we still need to get, but that we all agree on some place that we can land, so that Bob has a chance to even kind of talk to the board to put out some appetite to see what comes back. And then you guys put out yours, but if we're just doing an information out to the association and Bob has kind of like, if we come to consensus, at least it shows everybody that we at least have some sense of like where we can come to a kind of a middle ground kind of thing.
I think an open forum, Jason, for us, and as a first-year guy, we'll be referring back to you if anyone has any questions, I can assure you, for you, to have everything we've talked about be all of the conversation would be mind-numbing, and it would take forever.
Mm-hmm.
We might need something a little, I don't know if it's an exact proposal, but something a little bit more focused to discuss, even if it gets picked apart, than the idea that we would generally talk about all this stuff, because this, we've been talking about it for weeks. That would be a long conversation.
I think if what board side and district side, it does get us to the 5, if that's what the general, this is where it is, that is what we would have to discuss that as an offer, as a proposal of what does this look like, and then we have to have them take it to a vote, and in essence is what you're doing. To go
Yeah.
and do another week of saying, well, now let's just talk around this, and then
Right.
come back,
That's what
it's
I was
at the
saying,
point
yep.
where we have to say, vote on it, and vote yes or no, just like Bob will take it to the board and say, vote on it, and vote yes or no, because we can represent to the best of our ability what we've been being told, but then it comes down to the membership giving their voice, and I think we're at that point.
And I am in
he-
agreement there. I think if you leave it open, like we're just gonna have a forum and talk about it, nobody's gonna be happy because they're gonna think that we can come back and do better.
Right, exactly.
And so, and if nobody, if we can't get it passed, if the board doesn't, I'm sure we will probably receive feedback on what the problem is, and then this table can have another conversation,
Yes, yes.
knowing exactly what those groups'
Yep.
problem with it is, and how big that problem is.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know that you can officially do that without a vote.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Laura's, Connie is saying,
Is
But
that
this team has to vote.
this team
Yeah, we
votes
would have
on
to.
us vote, and then you guys decide, but what I heard her saying is you guys take it to your membership, do the presentation of the offer, and then they do a vote.
Oh, yeah, so that's just no different than
Right.
what we do anyway.
Right.
I mean, I don't think,
I guess what I was just trying to,
or do we feel it out ahead of time and come back and say, okay, we
well,
were,
that's, and
we
honestly,
knew where
that's,
we were at, or we don't?
I've never been this leery before, and,
Yeah.
and, I mean, you guys know that, I've been here, and I'm just trying to be honest from what I'm hearing, and so it's gonna take some educating, it's gonna take some
So
time,
what-
and I don't know if, I mean, because I think that if we just go and we have a vote and let people ask questions on this proposal, and then, I'm scared.
I guess we could wait till Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls get done, and then we could maybe ours.
Lane is gonna be a while, I feel like, they've got just figuring out, just like, I think there's gonna be a little bit.
So
If
just,
they haven't started.
right, I, just, as you're thinking about how you present this, I'm looking at all of these things. Yeah, there's a 3% to all of the groups. There's a 2% increase to the overall salary schedule, but it's going to the 8 people, but that is a 2% increase. You have 2% through the drop days, so that's 7%. But then on top of that 7%, we have steps and lanes, which is at least 1%. If you're just stepping down, it could be 1.5, or I don't know what that is, Brian, closer to 2,
Yeah.
if you're stepping down and moving over.
Moving
So that,
over.
now you're like 8 or 9, and I know not everybody's getting that, but as far as like
What's the
thinking
matter?
about the increase in the amount of money we're putting toward our staff, it's well beyond what that 3% looks like, and then you have the increase in the medical, which actually puts money in people's pockets. So I think if you present like the whole picture,
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, that's what
And
I'm
I think
saying.
it's really important to do what John just did, and that, because ultimately, everybody's gonna vote their own pocketbook.
Right.
Right,
Mhm.
and some people will work the numbers differently than me in their head, but people need a chance to work the numbers.
Yeah, you know, and once they really work through and see what those numbers are, you know, then, you know, they're gonna do thumbs up or down based on that. And for most folks, you know, if they're in a situation like Lisa just described, where they're moving down and over and getting some aid funds and getting an increase in dollars from insurance that are gonna get back in their pocket, you know, when you take all of that into consideration, it's pretty significant. And I would just finish by saying, you know, we always wish we could do more.
Yeah.
And we always wish that we would do more. We're in the unique position where we have to represent all the interests of the district. Yours are more focused, obviously, and so, you know, we're making the effort to try to make it work for everybody.
So if someone goes from a BA 36, step 10, so they're in the middle, down, just step down, that's $1,400 and change, it's 2.8% just going down. They go across to, then they go down and across, it's 53,650, it's a 6.5%. So if you move down and across, it's like 6.5%. So I mean,
That's next year's 3% added on though, right?
no.
No, you haven't added.
That's just this current salary.
That's
schedule.
just current salary.
Then you'd
Okay.
add 3%.
I didn't know
on
if you
top
were
of that.
using next year's proposal.
No, then you'd add 3% to that, and if they were 8, and if, I mean, there's gonna be people, if they move down and across and get 8, they're gonna get like a 10% raise.
And the governor will be right.
Based on what they're getting, I mean, that's not insignificant,
and I think you have to look at the whole picture.
and plus the drop date, leaving the 2%.
It's really a pretty huge package. After I listen to you say all that, I'm not sure.
So I I make the motion that we do the, 3%, we do scenario 3, which is the 3%. We have continue with the 8 flow through, which is in this scenario, steps and lanes, the medical goes completely through, how we said earlier. The additional coaches and hard to fill, we already talked about. And then we do 4 drop days. Drop days means daily rate of pay, so everyone gets paid their daily rate of pay. They get paid 4 days, which is a one-time pay in the November paycheck, based on their salary next year, at the beginning of the year, which in our world equates to just over probably 2%.
Just
A
give
little
them-
over.
And, yeah, and so I make the motion that we do that, right now, that's a interest-based, because we're meeting, recruiting and retaining, we're being competitive with our neighbors, we're honoring our discussions, we're trying to honor the work of the teachers and how hard it's been it's definitely sustainable, equitable, value the staff and livable, getting closer to livable wage. So I make the motion that we do that, and then we put it for the board. Bob brings it up at discussion. They won't be able to vote this week because it's not on the agenda, so he will just have to bring it up in the discussion. But if he can get some sense of favorable or not,
Almost likely they're not supposed to vote.
until you guys, yeah, good point. So he'll get a sense about it, at least for feedback, is how you guys were talking about. If you guys go, bring it to your membership and get a voting, whether it's ratified or not, we have a sense to move forward, and then this group can come back together if we need to, but that's a,
And then, so, then what about leadership dollars? Is that, are you throwing that out?
yeah.
So nobody gets leadership dollars next year?
Based on the fact that we're doing an entire flow through with the 8 money.
If you put leadership in there, I wouldn't be able to do, honestly, this is where I'd be. But I wouldn't, if you leave leadership out of it, I would be able to do a thumbs up completely on it. Cause I do agree, I think it's a pretty hefty package when you know, look at the whole big picture. And I just don't want us going down a road where now the state takes something away, so now it's expected for the local taxpayers. It's just me.
And I think we have a general understanding that we're gonna have to deal with this 8 funding issue in the future.
Yeah.
And that notion needs to be included in whatever language we end up with.
Well, and the state needs to be in those conversations as well. We need to know what
Yeah.
how they're gonna continue, what their process is.
Agreed.
Including enrollment
Including
versus
Yeah.
ADA.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Did the drop days money, last year we identified where that money was gonna come from?
Yeah, I was saying from that bottom gray line.
From the enrollment revenues from
21.
fiscal year 2022, the current year.
Yeah, that bottom line in the gray for scenario 3.
Thank you.
Can Brian Wallace, given next year's, because it changes, you don't have any idea what that total number will, you have an estimate, but you don't know what that number will be right now.
No.
For drop days, times all the staff for next year, you don't know what that number will be.
No, I mean, it'll be.
Roughly, you
His
do.
1% number.
I was just wondering if you two could copy scenario,
$600,000. Yeah.
okay, if you could copy scenario 3 and make it, I don't know, scenario 8, and throw a line in that shows the drop days and a rough number, because then there's a slide we can all look at that.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
And then, well, on Jason, for like presentation, you could do it, let's have to start from ground zero. You would have that slide, but it would be scenario, again, I don't know what number it is.
Well, and Bill just said that was 600,000, which,
Did you get 2%? This is, so you're.
Which if you go back, yes, to that
287.
slide,
Okay.
the 2% is right there.
yeah, so
That's
I was
this year.
thinking it was around that amount, and Bill's saying 600, so it's around,
Right, so then you have an estimate, so if that, even if we put a approximate sign rather than an equal sign.
Also changes that bottom
It varies a
line
little
so
bit.
that it's what we're using.
No.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and, but then Then there's there's an initial presentation slide that we can all agree to, whether you're going to the board or you're going to membership, and it's at least would be part of our presentation, that this is what we're talking about, right?
Here, let me clip this in there and then we can.
Was there, on that budget worksheet that Rebecca's been keeping track of, were all of those things captured in Ryan's slide? I know the, coaching costs were there, but it seems like there was something else that we wanted to
This
put on.
in,
so-
this thing, no, this thing, no.
It was
It's
called,
on
it's
the-
called the draft
And
IDP dollars.
It's this,
Yeah,
it's
it's
up
on
in
the
the,
agenda.
on the agenda, up in the resources.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Oh, hard to fill, was that on there?
Yeah, she put the hard,
Hard to fill was, yeah, it was.
yeah, he put all
You
of
put
this.
those together on there.
Okay.
Do you want me to,
Yeah,
do
100.
I have permission to edit this?
Do you want this, permission to this thing?
No, he's on the
That's
other, I
one of
think,
Brian's.
he's
Oh,
helping
that's
Brian
a
with that,
PDF, isn't it?
that slide there.
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna
have
say.
it.
He's doing that slide.
Do you want to take, oh, you can't do.
No, I'm just saying I have the math already.
Do you want me, do you want to?
Make sure
I can
the
find
screen behind you.
spreadsheets somewhere.
What is that? Oh, we've passed that. The your board, do we
Yeah.
have?
Just so we have, we changed it.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't, there's kind of a motion on the table and we haven't, I put a motion on the table and we haven't voted. And my concern is I wanna make sure that we talk through this leadership thing without, I don't wanna precipitously, is that the right word?
I like it.
Vote, I don't think that's the right word.
I
I don't wanna
like it.
vote before it's time.
Preempt.
Preempt, thank you, that's the word I was looking for, Connie. I don't wanna preemptively vote without having this discussion, because if this is interest-based, I think we need to continue, we need to at least talk through this leadership money. Brooke feels obviously very strongly about it. I personally would think, okay, we do 2 drop days and keep the leadership. It's like if your people wanted leadership versus the 1 drop day, I think that, but this, the reason I said the drop days instead of leadership is because it would give, a lot of people are getting the 8 money, and then this would be that other number 2 you guys were talking about where you wanna put the money, so I thought that would be more helpful as far as our common interest, but you guys talk about what you were thinking.
And equitability.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but what do you guys think about that leadership versus the, what do you guys think?
I don't know, it was number 2 on our priority list to keep it,
Number 3.
well, they were, yeah, between the 2, the 50, yeah, so ultimately we referred to it as number 2 priority overall. Yeah, I don't know, I mean,
Above the medical?
yes.
I'm a little torn, and I like the idea of the buffer of 1 year for people, particularly some of those folks with some significant dollars out there. But if we were doing that, so we went 1 more year to give the buffer, which I like, if I'm relying on those dollars. But if it's not gonna maintain after another year, man, we missed an opportunity not to hang it on. When the state canceled it, it canceled, because this is that year. And so there's the politics of it. Well, it canceled, because the state canceled it, they paid for it, they canceled it. But then I look at people who have grown accustomed to that and are doing good things with those titles as leadership, and they're doing good things, and they've become accustomed to it, and suddenly it just goes away. And I can feel the pain of those folks too, so I don't have a great answer. That's just right now sitting here, as I think about what I'm thinking about, those are my 2 struggles.
I think, I understand what you're saying, but I also remember hearing last year, just that you guys had voiced very strongly, that people should not have become accustomed to those dollars. And the flip side of that is I hear all the time that the same people get those dollars, and that other people haven't even had an opportunity to ever get those dollars. So, I see both sides of that argument. And I very strongly see the side that the people that have been getting them have known for a year that this was coming.
Well, we've already actually been down this road because we
Yes.
had a year when the governor said we're not getting leadership jobs. Remember,
Yes.
we ripped that Band-Aid
Yeah.
off once
Yeah.
already,
Right.
and then they backfilled them, and so
Mhm.
people ended up
Right.
but not the same people, we didn't pay them out that way,
Well, I
so
think-
we've already kind of gone
It's like
down.
a 2-year warning.
And
It's
it,
coming.
right, yes. What I do think it's going to create is some, discontent within the buildings on the leadership side, or the administration side, in how you're going to entice people to fill those roles.
Just
You
so,
know, coming,
because we
I
did.
coming down.
Yeah,
We
and that's,
did
But
but
as
that's
far
an
as the
administrative,
dollars,
that's
I
an
mean-
administrative thing.
While I'd like to say
Just
that,
really
yes,
otherwise.
we should work to try to preserve those dollars for those people, I think it's been coming for a long enough period of time that this should not come as like in their face shock that now they're not there. Because we gently talked about it last year. Well, I don't know,
And they did have a year where
Torn.
they didn't get them.
right.
And the trade-off is that 80% of those people who are receiving the leadership dollars are also in the 8 category, and we're continuing the full flow through that, which is unique.
Right, and that's based on people who are currently getting aid money. We have a whole new group that will graduate into aid money this year based on their evaluations, so. This year, so that number of people earning it is actually also going to increase. Yeah.
So my curiosity question really would be, you know, the people that are getting leadership dollars with this kind of an increase, does that offset those leadership dollars? And, you know, those people may need to look at this year as a fund neutral year, which is hard, I get that, but the leadership dollars were never guaranteed.
I know you guys can't speak but for ratification, but do you think it'd be more ratifiable more of your membership would be in favor of keeping the leadership dollars for 1 more year and just doing 2 drop days instead of 4? What do you think? What do you guys feel the tenor, based on your input, is for that, do you think? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Cause it's a
I think
1%,
that's good.
1% kind of.
Yeah,
It's close.
I don't have any sense of that. I know that 4 drop days goes to everybody, and 2 drop days and the other 1% goes to leadership, goes to a more limited group.
But you're thinking it was like 3rd on your priority list.
Right,
What do you
right.
think, Bill?
Leadership money. I just know for some people it's gonna be a big, huge hit. You know, there's some people that make significant amount of money on that. I mean, yeah, it's a stipend, and yeah, you shouldn't depend on it, but if it comes in your paycheck, then I think you
Yeah.
should depend on it.
So,
Well,
I guess what I was, I'm sorry.
no, I
Jason.
interrupted you, sir.
I guess what I'm hearing, because like before, I had heard, because I get the same people, or I get people that come in and tell me, how do I get these leadership dollars? How do I get these leadership dollars? And then we talk about people, well, we have people now that are dependent on it because they've gotten them. It doesn't sound like to me that there's an equal opportunity for newer or even our mid-level staff to get these leadership dollars. That's just what I'm hearing.
You can make a similar argument about aid money too, though, because you've had to be past 8 years before you can even touch that.
Right.
Except for
But
that.
everybody gets the same opportunity.
Yeah, to get towards.
Well, I guess
Well, I know.
what
But
was,
the leadership is school dependent, cause principals, that's what some of the feedback, like
Right.
admin gets to decide who goes in those positions, so it's a little bit, it's not like everyone has the equal opportunity. At least that's my feedback, I don't know if that's how it's running or not, but the building principals actually get to be the final one on the spreadsheets that say where the leadership funding goes. Is that correct, Lisa? Is that, I'm not trying to misspeak or throw anybody under the bus, I'm just saying that's the feedback I've heard.
I guess, so then, what was the original intent for paying people leadership dollars?
From the state, the governor, when he did that?
No, from their district point of view, so when you pay people,
Well, it's actually illegal, they give us a spreadsheet and they said this is the only thing you can use leadership dollars for. The leadership premiums, there's like mentor costs, There's like A through F, and Brooke has to actually go through every leadership stipend and put it into one of the legal in-law categories. And so, I don't think we had a statement of intent, did we, Lisa? I know one thing that we did do differently is we didn't keep very much at the district level at all. We have a few, like lead nurse or something that was important district-wide, but we kept really small, very small percentage at the district level, and we distributed almost all of it out to buildings, and then told they got to do spreadsheets, and I've shared it with you, I've kept longitudinal data,
Yeah.
all the people and what they've signed up for over.
Did you pass it out by enrollment too? Didn't you do a map number of
Per
dollars?
capita,
Right.
for students in
Right,
that
so,
building, yeah.
an enrollment.
But
Yeah,
there was,
yeah, exactly.
the funding was based on how many FTE you had.
Right, which is based on enrollment roughly, there's some funny special
Sort of,
ed
yeah.
units and
Yeah.
all that, but.
And I shared it with him so that he
Yeah.
would have,
So-
we've been super
and so then
transparent.
Yeah, I talked to somebody about that a few years ago, and they're telling me that's how the money's arrived in the buildings, with equity, because bigger buildings, smaller
Yeah.
buildings.
So then the intent of that money was people that, in a sense, went above and beyond
Yeah.
their normal contract
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And so now that's gone away, and so we're saying that those people now need to just be glad that they're getting the AIP funds, because that's, I guess I just need to.
No, I hear what you're saying.
No, I hear-
I hear what you're
And then I
saying.
even wanna go take it one step further, I
Mhm.
hate saying this, but we're giving a stipend to our SWD teachers for going above and beyond.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And now we're kinda
Mhm.
stipulating by saying, oh, they're important, what their work they're doing is important. We're gonna take everything else away from
Yeah.
all the other.
Well, I think it's good to understand the history behind that from how the money got there. You gotta remember, when that money was passed, the legislature, and this is philosophical, and actually, I bet you IEA was against it. Their philosophy was, they don't like it when all the teachers got the same raise. Remember? They'll say, they all get the same raise. We wanna get it where, that's not how it works in the real world. We wanna get it where that the money goes to those who are performing.
Right.
Okay? So the leadership dollar was a legislator's attempt to differentiate pay between teachers.
Merit
Absolutely.
pay.
It was like a merit pay.
Mhm.
And in fact, in the legislations, it was even written that you couldn't negotiate it, right? You cannot negotiate these dollars. It was written in the legislation. It was non-negotiable. So we just followed, we tried to, follow the intent of the legislation with fidelity and say, okay, well, we will give to those who are, doing the extras, and try to get it to the building decision makers, because they know, the closest where the decision can make, often the best is made, not always, but we're trying to do that. And so that was sort of the history, behind it, and now it's come, and now it's almost like the philosophy is changing, where the state's saying, well, we wanna just make sure everybody can get more money, so we're gonna use this leadership dollars when we're doing that way, and we're shifting the focus, and they're going back.
Yeah.
I mean, so, do we shift like that, or do we say, no, we want to do the merit-based pay now? And we sort of, I don't know, I mean, it's an interesting
Yeah.
thing and how it's worked.
And I didn't mean to cut you guys off, Laura and Lisa, did you guys have something to add to that
No.
conversation?
Oh, my fault, like conversation. That was against the norms. Dips.
Jason and I did it one time too, so we admit to, when I
Yeah.
asked about
I'm
this,
like, I own it.
I asked the survey.
Detention.
What I said to Laura, just so the rest of the team knows, is that we have 35 P5s this year who, as long as they meet all the criteria, will move over to join the other.
So that would put almost half our staff then receiving the aid.
I don't
and
know
I'm
if that, I
guessing-
don't know if that has any bearing on the conversation about leadership.
Over half
That's-
certified staff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
because,
be giving, if
so
all
if you,
35.
yeah, and
What's
so
the
if
current
you,
number?
if, what?
What's the current number, what's this
I
year?
think it's 96.
So you go to the 131? Is
Yeah.
that what they said?
So
what-
you're nearing almost 50%, but then, and then if you go back and you look at Brian's scattergram, That's about right with where our veteran staff is
Mhm.
on the right. Where we're kind of lacking, like I said, is in that middle.
We also then, the year following this one, there are several people who are currently P4. So.
Well, but it's always been about longevity as well. So maybe the people looking at eyeballing another district go, oh, but they don't pass through 8, and a year from now,
Mhm.
I get that.
Right.
And it, not necessarily in perpetuity, but it looks pretty good.
Mhm.
So maybe that helps with retention.
But yeah, it goes down at the bottom of Brian's slideshow.
Oh,
So Jason, I was looking at that just because I didn't know if that would help with the conversation about
Scenario.
leadership
Way down at the bottom.
versus
I just took a
the
picture of
drop
the
days.
spreadsheet.
It, recognizing that half of our certified staff is gonna get APE money next year, which is, what's the AP one for next year? Is it like 27 or something?
Well, this year was 20, oh, for AP one.
AP one,
I can tell you.
25.
Adds up
so-
somewhere. I have it
And you guys, Bill, put the numbers, the,
right here. Next year's AP one is 3,114.
How much?
3,000.
So,
Brian plus junior.
I don't know. That's
Well,
why Brian
BKG.
trained him.
And you think
BKG.
about it, so like, our highest leadership stipend combined, if you think about how we can't go past how much?
9.
Or 8,000.
No.
8,000.
8,000.
I would take that.
I
So
thought- I
fourth,
thought-
They're a quarter of the base.
I thought it rounded up to 9 now, somewhere closer to
Oh, I
9.
thought you were saying
it might be.
900.
No, 9,000.
Okay.
9, I think it's
Close to
9,000.
9,000.
Yeah.
That's,
Everyone was looking at me like I was crazy. I was like, you guys, it's like right around
Because
9,000.
900 was
Could be
never.
9,000 you're crazy.
900 was the minimum, so I thought that's what you were talking about.
Don't, not that children here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Wait, oh, Lord. That would have not been good.
No,
So do you have a spreadsheet of that?
Yeah, it's fine.
A
District is
spreadsheet
the first
of-
time, why shouldn't the district do it again?
The leadership stipends?
yeah, we have
Get another job.
a spreadsheet that we could probably put some together of how many people are gonna, could possibly move next year. Or you mean leadership stipends, I'm thinking eight, and you have a spreadsheet of that. Because that did your report every year.
$8,000, and that's not way. It doesn't matter how much raise we do next year.
Yeah. You might have that neutral year, where the backfill is a break-even year, and that creates some heartburn.
Now, I do want to say this on record, is that the principals do have very, very hefty, they have very nice building budgets compared to other districts. And I'm the only reason I keep bringing other districts is not because I'm trying to tout that we're the best, even though we are, but I'm not trying to, but I'm looking at our interests of competition when I talk to other superintendents. We give a lot of money to them, that's not just the leadership piece that we were talking about. This is their 410 instructional account. Yeah, Bob is giving me glaring right now because this is definitely
You
not.
should see what they have
Bob,
to deal with.
Lisa said, when Bob was the superintendent, I could barely, and I'm like, okay, Lisa, can we not bring that up with Bob in the room? And now, here he
You're
is.
telling on yourself.
I'm telling on myself. But I do, one thing, and who knows, it may change since I'm not gonna be the superintendent, but I really believe in local leadership at the building level so that they know, where they need to put the money. They can certainly decide, which they have done this year, there's several principals that have used some of their instructional funds, because it is hefty, and they have used that money to fund some leadership positions at their school. So if it's important and they're doing after hours work and it's important to the building, there could be some building level decisions that
They
way.
do have the extra duty for extra pay money
Yeah.
in addition to their building.
Yes,
funds.
absolutely.
Correct.
And that's in the negotiated agreement as well. That's 139,000, I think, right? The one that's in the negotiated agreement that we have,
Cause we did that language, which is what we had originally, like,
Yeah.
even brainstormed, like, if the leadership dollars was still there, do we rewrite it as that style of funding?
And so that, to Laura's, my point, like, if these positions are really important to the building, some of those positions are like homework, things that are just like kind of
one-offers. and
one
they could
offers,
instead
they
do a
could put
leadership.
that money towards this as well if somebody was doing something that was really important. That, I know I'm not completely making up for what you guys are saying, but there are a couple of other avenues that building administrators could help, to your point, Bill Ryder, like they could help with that
Right.
sticker shock.
And as things
Yeah,
come
just-
through,
Yeah, and Ryan hasn't really,
like as things like ESSER comes through and we have new state standards, like if the district at the focus at the top level says, we want to create a team of leadership, there's still opportunities, like we are not saying that you cannot provide leadership, we're saying we are not committed to it in this style, in this fashion. The district would then look at their current funding based on that reality of that year and their needs, and would pitch that to the board saying we would like to add in these stipends. I am struggling between, to be very honest, the 4 drop days to me is better for all. Knowing my membership and the makeup of my membership, they're gonna want the leadership dollars. So that's where I'm like, ugh. So I think at this point, I am a thumb sideways just to say for myself, no matter what. And we have to get feedback from our membership, whether that's a vote or through feedback, whatever you think is the best route. So that's where I think that it'll end, but that'll be up to members, in my opinion.
It'll be interesting to, because I don't have a good sense of what percentage of our certified staff gets leadership stuff.
Well, I think probably where the concern is we have probably a strong group of people in the LEA that get several stipends for leadership, and that is significant. So I'm guessing those are the ones that are.
Right, but if it's only 25% of the membership, you've got 75% are gonna say, hey, wait a minute, no, I want the money, I don't wanna give it to people who are already getting the other money. So I just don't have a good sense of what percentage of the membership is actually getting leadership stipends.
I can run a report, but I'm telling you, I already know that.
If we, I'm trying to process through, talking to get more information or doing an actual vote, because if we do an actual vote and it comes back no, isn't there, now there's next steps that we have to go through?
Just come back to the table and you share
There's
what the
no-
why is. We don't go to
There's-
mediation or
there's-
anything unless we just get to an impasse.
Right, and then we have to go to another vote.
Right.
So we have to follow a certain set of.
It's just coming back to the table as a team and then
No, I was just trying to process.
figuring out what the.
Some of that was in that agreement, we can't
You probably
Clarify
learned
the
something.
question. Just to be clear and I have to explain this. The 4 drop days are preferred because they are one-time money.
Yes, because we're concerned
Because
about
it's
the
across the
enrollment.
board.
Understood.
It's more
And,
active.
and everybody gets it, not
Yeah,
just.
but funding source wise, it's
equitable,
about
and
one
so
time.
to pull it out of the 2.3 we had left over from this federal fiscal year is more responsible.
Until we know for sure that that's gonna be
Okay.
ongoing.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I have to read the survey. We're starting the superintendent survey tonight for enrollment funding. I'm in charge of the little subcommittee with superintendents. So we have a survey, it's interest-based decision-making, and we're starting with the survey, so I have to review that tonight. It's gonna go out to all superintendents in the state, because we're trying to get to the legislators and get a plan in place that's how much does it really cost to run a school district nowadays? Not anymore 1973 when 1991,
Yeah.
but what does it really cost
A lot
nowadays?
of things have changed.
Yeah, and cost of living and all that, and we're still
Technology.
50 out of 51 funding per student in the state. So,
That's sad.
Who's behind us?
Puerto Rico.
Thanks. No, it's not that. They're not a state. Neither's Washington DC, so.
Right, but they
they get to be counted.
So you
They're
have
above
a
us.
typo on your thing, unless you like the Frenchish looking enrollment revenues to cover gap. You have an extra E.
We, just say we.
Change that and send it back and we'll stick it back in.
So then are we under consensus about the leadership just going away? Or are we, I would feel better about going to my group, knowing that we have it for one more year and telling them,
But we've already done the one more
Yeah.
year, I guess that's the thing that I'm struggling with, is we had the year where people
Yeah.
didn't get them. Everybody who was
Yeah.
used to getting them did not get them, and we used them because they came at the end of the year to support Summer Curriculum Summit. So different people got them for that, but not, so we've already kind of ripped off the Band-Aid. It just,
And I mean, like, leadership, like Ruth said, is the component to receive to aid, to even move. You have to be a part of that to even continue on. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that, I don't think that people are gonna say, oh, I'm just not gonna do it now, because we have so many people that still wanna move on that age scale.
If,
See, you know, the way we've looked at it is the leadership, that's kind of been rolled into the 8 fund.
yeah.
Which is
What the governor
100%
said.
all the way through. The only way I can see to do what you're suggesting is to modify what we're doing with the 8 fund.
Right.
But-
Or the drop
But
downs.
whether or not you wanna do that and try to sustain that over time, you're gonna be faced with this problem again of how do you wean people away from creating expectations that you can't live with in the long term.
I think a way to, this is none of my business, but I think a way to sell it to, when you're presenting this to your membership, and like you guys were talking about, is if we go for these 4 drop days, it's a for sure thing, everyone gets them. And then there's still the possibility that people could get leadership through those other avenues we've talked about, versus if you give up 2 drop days for leadership, then that's, you know what I mean?
That's not good for relationships.
Right.
do we, if that's the either or that we're down to, like, do we have to take it to a vote, or can we take it as a, here's presented the package, this is the either or we're down to, is the 4 drop days? I mean, I will just say personally, right now, I don't know what the membership would choose, 4 days or 2 days and leadership, I just don't know. So is that,
That's up to
leadership
you
in
guys.
1 year, is that something, can we take that as an either or? And maybe that's just something we have to process on, but that's the decision of, are we taking something to a vote, or are we taking something to a conversation?
well, and it might be helpful to actually show, like, what does it mean in real money for people? Instead of just, like, all of those big dollars.
Well, they can
What is-
have all of their, I mean, I can even make them a chart that says, put in your current year's salary, add this, and this slot, that's what you're gonna get for next year's salary, like, they should be able to do that.
Well, there's
Or our
that
high school
part,
math teachers
but
can.
there's that part, but I think you need to show the slides that Brian came up with
Yeah.
with regard to
To see
the
what's
medical
final.
insurance, so they can see per month what might be in their pocket as a result. I just think this, you could talk through it, but until you get to like the nuts and bolts of how does it actually impact me, then they'll be able to make a more, I'm not saying intelligent in the.
Informed.
Thank you. And a more informed decision about which direction they're gonna ask you to go, if you can give them some ways to kind of plug things in for themselves.
We can give them a plug it in worksheet, which would be easy, I think a support that would be helpful is to see a 3% increased salary schedule, to get them the current next one.
I think the
I know
writers can do
teaching
that
our
right
eighth,
now.
yeah, I know teaching our 8th graders to do percentage of and add is difficult, but I'm gonna tell you, it's still hard with our teachers.
He's almost got it done.
Thank you. But it is, it's still, I still sit there with people in the chair and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, down, over, times
So it
1.03.
It's sounding to me then like we need to go talk and then come back before we ratify, or before we go to put it to a vote.
It's really up to you guys, because you guys can right now just say that you guys are like this, and we're not gonna move forward on what my motion was. If you feel like you wanna go talk to your people, you could go like this, and we just say, you guys are gonna go talk to them. If you guys are this or this, then you can say, we're gonna just do a vote to see where the consensus is. What if it passes? And then the board does a special meeting and brings it up, and it all gets done. And then Brooke can do new contracts instead of contracts, she would be super happy, but it's not all about Brooke.
That's right.
It was yesterday,
Well, we're just
right?
looking at like 2 weeks, so that we work this week and come back next week. And then you-
Yeah, it's up to you guys what you guys wanna do, honestly, Bob's gonna talk about this tomorrow, Wednesday at the board meeting. And then what you guys wanna do, just for norm's sake, we need to vote, but if you guys wanna do a discussion, then I would just vote. Thumbs down, like we're not ready to do that, if that's what you guys wanna do.
I honestly think that's where I am right now,
Okay.
just because I'm not comfortable enough with, I love your proposal about going to the 2 and then having the leadership maybe, but I just don't know where the membership is with the leadership. I do know that in our survey it was on there.
I think we can give them this and give them the more detail of the 4-drop versus that and have them vote
That
on
would
that,
give us-
or if there's something else they give us.
And talk about this money.
Give us time to educate them a little bit too,
Yeah.
kinda, and then.
If you approach the membership without a due pass recommendation, what's the likelihood?
Part of it is how you
Yeah.
frame it.
Well, yeah, I know that, yeah.
But I think that's where he's saying too, I don't feel
I
comfortable going in
totally-
front of them right
Yeah.
now without educating them, without pushing and saying, here's what we believe is best. We still need
So
a
do you
little
want me to
more for you to
rescind,
give
I
them
think
that
I should
full
rescind, I'm
feedback.
gonna rescind my motion, Rebecca. You could just put that in the minute, in the notes.
Do you
Well,
want me to
these,
back up and find
these
that?
actually are public, the board to Brooke put them on, is putting them on board agendas, so. These are public meetings, so I'm gonna rescind my motion with the intent that the, association, wants to take and do a little bit more
And,
survey of their membership.
Fact finding.
and Bob as well, to his group. Cause they may come back and say, no, we want 5%
They,
for our team.
they won't.
That is a
We always
possibility.
wish we could do that.
It's like
And
you've
Becky, that's
practiced
just my
classes.
opinion, if the rest of the group is okay, I'll go here and we'll try to.
No, I'm getting a sense about it, I think I'll just rescind my motion. No, I'm good with that, with just, then gathering I'm rescinding my motion so the association can gather more data, more input from their membership, period.
So then we're stuck with another
Yes,
round.
next week.
Thought you were a family, remember?
You sound disappointed.
Or we came with the intent to finish.
So did I, but
It's the like.
I think we're gonna
Do you
need
think you'll-
stronger snacks next time.
Do you think we'll be able to
We can meet at the
meet
last
with
one
your
when they've
membership
got
this
stuff.
week and have our next meeting next Monday?
Ordinance house. Nah, from the west way.
The board has an executive session meeting on Monday next week. Will we, I don't know what time that is. Will the board review it?
Maybe we're gonna have
Let me look.
That's on
I
the
have it scheduled like in
scenarios,
the
right?
afternoon, like mid-afternoon.
Is that got a scenario number to it?
No, it's just at the very bottom.
Are we officially adjourning then? Like-
Wait, we gotta set a date
would
for
like
next
to
week.
see,
I guess I'd like to see.
The 16th,
Bob has short from what's on the board over
Bob, I
I'm
know,
thinking
where's
scenario
the,
12.
No, I really would like to see a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs sideways right now.
okay,
So
so
we know
then,
where we stand.
So Bob's gonna make it.
so can you make the motion then, Bob?
I'll make the motion that Becky made earlier, whatever that was.
You're gonna unrescind Becky's motion?
Yeah.
Which is
Is
fine.
that D
Are you
rescind?
tracking this, Rebecca?
And so it is that without the leadership is what you're stating.
It's this,
Which is
that Bill Ryder did it for us, it's this, no, sorry, sorry.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Took a little while to get to the table.
This is what happens at 8 o'clock.
It's the thing I said earlier, 3%, 4 drop days, and the 8 flow through money and all the 9.8 increase in medical insurance steps and lanes. Additional coaches and hard to fill. Amen. Okay, all those in favor, thumbs up. Sideways if you want more discussion, or you could go with it. Thumbs down if it's a no. Okay, so we have, did you get how many thumbs up, Rebecca?
Yeah,
Keep your thumbs up.
5 thumbs up.
Jason's and Laura's were upside down.
And then there was
Backwards day.
3 sideways, I think, and 2 down.
2 down.
One to go.
Okay, now, are we okay, to look at next week? The Bob, do you know, is the executive session here because the board members, has IBB in here, and then has, Rathdrum, which we're gonna miss again,
Oh,
the executive board meeting. For the
they're
Rathdrum
gonna
chamber.
fire us.
Yeah, I could get fired, but you're the treasurer, so.
You could ask them for a 1-year stay on that as a leadership stipend, if that's gonna be a hardship.
They-
Losing those funds.
They've had to, Bob, do you know, because could the, board go downstairs or, okay, so, do we
Well,
want?
we're gonna meet, next Monday,
Yeah,
midday, aren't
oh, yeah, you guys are, 12 to 1,
we? Yeah.
thank you, I found it now, I was looking I thought you said evening, so I was looking.
No, I said I didn't know what time you were.
So, guys, we're gonna be, 4:30 to 8.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would take that long.
Well, this is,
Are you sending that out?
I'm sending this out now. All those in favor of putting away 4:30 to 8, thumbs up, unanimous, Rebecca. With,
Let's not.
Brian sideways.
with, two sideways, but Rebecca with, a little bit stiffer snacks.
Beverages?
No,
What if we
snacks.
actually provide dinner?
Yeah, like, let's do a dinner.
Let's do a dinner.
And maybe it'll be a celebration. I'll ask Kevin to do.
That means stiffer
Okay.
Can't do that
We'll
here.
do with
Get
the,
permission
we'll
from
do
the
with
neighbors
dinner.
to drink on
Maybe
the
we'll
lawn.
do,
That's-
maybe we'll do local deli with Caesar salad and
That sounds good.
that way we can have the salad and then.
So, the ball's in your court.
Yeah.
You know what the basic parameter is. Make the pieces fit.
Yeah. Gotta go to work.
Okay.
It's past 8 o'clock.
Okay, you guys are done.
It's like a 7-year-old that's with her.
I'm just getting ready to go on the treadmill. Just the sitting is gonna put me to sleep.
Do you wanna hit stop on the imager?
Are we still
Because that's
recording?
a technical
Are
term.
we still recording?
Huh?
No, thank you, because Laura just reminded me and I would've forgot. So,
Somebody does that and just watch the ghosts in the boardroom all night long.
thank you everyone for attending. I hope you made it.